Manyoko son oui ya son anamu Ki akpani bato we otomo ni o ya do mo si afiye ya o Amo manyoko son oui ya son dembe mu o ya Ki akpani bato we otomo ni o ya do mo si afiye ya o Ki an se pa yanju o ki se pa yanju o S'apayanju ka o kiyan ma si apayanju o so si olele ya si olele o ya si olele lele o ya si olele yo si olele amon manyo ko so wi de ya son dan be mu Ki akpani bato we otomo ni o abiyan mi do mo si afiye ya o Ki an se payan diju o mama Ki an se payan diju o re son ke Wo ki an ya ki an se payan ju o Ki an ye uri money Mo re tole se ma bembe son biye Ki an ye uri money o e abato ni Passion même bobo Qui a oui money Mon retole c'est ma même pio abinyobe
Gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jah, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be focusing on identity politics. The politics based on groupings, right? It could be your ethnic group, it could be your county, it could be your religion, the place of birth, or your class. We're going to talk all that. So ethnicity, religion, and everything else in Liberian politics. And the reason we are talking about this is of late, we have seen a lot of, especially during the the run to pick vice president, people were talking about, let's get the vice president from the pellet belt, from the Bassa belt. I didn't hear Kissy and Crown belt though. Or let's take the vice president from Nimba, or let's go to Bassa, or the Southeast and all that. We also hear a lot of sermons being preached from the pulpit. Some say, well, this has started long ago. Dr. Martin Luther King did that effectively. So we look at religion, we look at ethnicity, and everything in between in our Liberian politics. What's causing it? What that level of influence should it be? Little more, little less, in between? What is it? Well, to discuss all this, I've assembled the best among the rest. Introducing first time on Tough Talking Thursday is Mr. Joe Wilson. His colleagues call him Comrade Joe Wilson. Joe, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis, and it's good to be here sharing the platform with the rest of the panelists.
Thank you, Joe. Joe he made his debut on Focus on Liberia during the debate night, and the fans called me. They say, "Where you got that guy from? Focus on Liberia, always getting good people." So we thought to bring Joe back on the big stage on Tough Talking Thursday, and we're going to talk tough. Let me welcome professor, diploma, writer, and someone who loves to work for presidents, Dr. Abdullah Dukle. Dr. Duke, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to be here. Hello to my co-panelists and to the audience.
Let me welcome the presenter on the Liberia History Channel. She is FOL Public Policy Analyst. That's Carl Family. Carl, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday. It's been a while.
It's always my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Let me welcome our governance consultant, Atme K. Saliv. Mr. Saliv, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm looking forward to a good discussion. Let's do it.
Great. And let me announce our colleague from a proud product of Waplo Institute, all the way from Kilipo Kanweke, Mr. Mohammed Sharif. He is FOL political analyst. Mr. Sharif, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you for that elaborate intro. It's always good to be here, Dennis.
And comrade, it's been a while since we've not seen you, so I want to introduce you with a battle cry and say yo, comrade Sharif. I've been here with now. You got say yo.
Say yo.
Say yo.
Great job, Dennis.
Right. All right. Well, again, want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe on Tough Talking Thursday, where we talk tough on identity politics. Well, this is nothing new in the West, wherever we see identity politics. In Liberia, we see elections or selection and some affinity based on ethnic groupings, based on the country of origin, based on the region, and all of that in between. Let me start with Mr. Sharif to give us a little historical context, maybe from our recent past elections, maybe starting from 1985 or so. Mr. Sharif, now let's start with, it could be the based on your ethnic group or county or what have you, or what has been the history of Liberia going through this kind of thing?
Well, once again, Dennis, thank you. This is a great topic, but keep in mind, we're not just talking identity politics or ethnicity. We have now coalesced this with religion, which is a very hot topic when you talk about Liberia. So I like to go with the religious piece first. So even though the Liberian Democratic political foundation is based on the precept of separation of church and state, but church and state in Liberia is not really separated if you think about it. So when you look at Liberia, for example, a lot of our colleagues always remind us that Liberia was founded on Christian principle, which is a flawed argument that Liberia was founded on Christian principle. Liberia was not founded on Christian principle. There were you could argue that Liberia was founded on religious principle. It wasn't just Christianity. It was people of before 1822. It was people of other religions, right? Whether they were the native Liberians, who animists, or whether they were Muslims, there were people who practiced faith in Liberia. So let's set that as our foundation. I want to go to 1847 because 1847 or in the lead up to independence, maybe 1842, 1844, around there. One of the issues I talked about this before. One of the issues that in the lead up to the election of 1847 was the involvement of the church. So there was a dichotomy, an ideological divide, if you like, in the election of 1847. There was a Reverend John Says, S-U-I-S. John Says was a Methodist clergyman who was very much involved in Liberian politics, in early Liberian politics. And so he was a Methodist clergyman. At this time, Governor Thomas Buchanan, at some point, Governor Thomas Buchanan decided to impose, there were duty-free privileges before then, and Governor Thomas Buchanan decided to stop that. And the Reverend John Says, who was a Methodist clergyman, decided to oppose the governor and founded the anti-administration party. So this anti-administration party was founded based on his opposition to Governor Thomas Buchanan. Of course, Thomas Buchanan died, and then J.J. Roberts took over from Buchanan, and then there was the election of 1847. John Says, if you will, is the ideological leader of the anti-administration party. These days you have, vision bearers, all these different things here. John says is actually the ideological leader of the first opposition party in Liberia. So he recruited Samuel Benedict, who contested the election of 1847 against J.J. Roberts. Samuel Benedict, of course, was defeated. Again, the opposition just dissipated into oblivion. Samuel Benedict became chief justice, and so he was very much involved in Liberian politics. He will return again as Liberia's consul general at this time. I'm sorry, America's consul general to Liberia. So he was very much involved. So if you look at that, there was, no division between church and state. Church and state, it is said that, there's this sort of division, but really there's no division between church and state. And if you fast forward, some of our presidents have been religious leaders in their churches. Toba was a Baptist, and he preached in his the Provident Baptist Church in his hometown of Bentor in Montserrat County. And so, church leaders, if you look at your own example, Dennis, you probably went to school where, that was built by missionaries. I went to Catholic school in Zoeju, that the missionaries play a very heavy role in teaching us, in molding us into the people that we've become. Don't forget, too, Islam has also played a very critical role in Liberia. My own father was an imam of the Central Mosque in Zoeju, and he was someone who was always in the leadership of bringing people together. So it has been very important in Liberia. When you look at today, what's going on with the pulpit being used in the manner that it is now, this is nothing new. What is new is the viciousness of it, the vicious attack of other individuals, whether it's Prince Johnson or whether it's Cummins, rebutting to Prince Johnson in the way they did, even though his was, their response was not done in the church. But you see that George Weah goes to church and attack his opponent. And so it's been that way for a very long time. Most of our leaders have been associated with churches. Maybe with time, we can talk about the ethnicity piece of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Salif to kind of, for anyone watching us, when we say identity politics is a big word. Break it down for us. And is this unique to Liberia?
No, I will start with, thank you, Janice. I will start with the second part of the question. Identity politics is not unique to Liberia. In fact, identity politics is a big vehicle for electoral politics. And identity politics, oftentimes when political strategists or even social scientists who write about these things talk about, they're really talking about various groups that have affinity to one another, that those affinities then can lead to somewhat forming a set of self-identity, values-based politics, beliefs-based politics. So, for example, here in the U.S., they talk about the various political blocks into women's votes, youth votes, college-educated voters, college-educated women, college-educated men, rural educated women, non-college educated rural, educated urban, non-college educated urban, the elderly, immigrants, and so forth and so on. And then if you go further, they talk about the Bible Belt, right? The Southern Baptist or Southern United States, where Christianity, evangelical Christianity, is a big sort of political base for conservative Republicans. That's, so just look at those, and then also look at the political parties themselves, the ideological leanings and positions of these political parties. In order to be a Democrat, you have to have all kinds of certain social beliefs. The government is there to essentially support citizens and empower citizens as a way of as a way of sort of doing their part to implement the social contract. Republicans, on the other hand, believe that it's the private sector that should, people should lift themselves up by the bootstrap and so on. Going to Africa, going to Liberia specifically, our identity politics there is very crucial, right? I always say, quote this American congressman way back 1932, Tip O'Neill, who said all politics is local. All politics is local really means identity politics. It really means you have to understand the political nuances, the calculus, the local calculus. You first have to be elected in order to have power to serve at the capital, to serve in the city, right? To do that, you ought to understand where the votes are. What are the main issues of interest to people, to which groups of people? It could be in Liberia, it could be the church, it could be the mosque, the Islamic community, it could be the youth, it could be women, it could be rural women, it could be a sort of geopolitical division. Geopolitics is also identity politics, which we hear a lot in Western campaign politics, where they talk about geopolitics, even in sort of global governance. When they talk about world order, right, they talk about geopolitics. That simply means, so which pockets of the world or this country has what influence, what's of interest to them. We talk about the Nimba vote. We talk about the different grades of votes in Lofa, the Kwaduboni, the sort of Madinka nation vote there. You talk about the Lama people, the Bandi people, the Kisi people. How do you influence and persuade these different blacks to vote for you? Now we're hearing a new term, the Southeast, blending all kinds of peoples and nations and ethnic groups together, calling them Southeast, which are not even the same, when you really look at it. So identity politics could mean all kinds of things. That just depends on the context, depends on who the politician is or are, and what are their understanding of these issues.
Thank you. Carl, how has identity politics influenced elections and public policy?
So can I talk a little bit about, I just wanted to address something, that the Commonwealth of Liberia and the Republic of Liberia should never be confused for so many reasons. And I agree with 99.9% of what my brother Mohammed said, but the Commonwealth of Liberia is not the Republic of Liberia. One of the most revolutionary things to happen in the history of the modern state is Article 3 of the 1847 Constitution, one of the oldest written records of religious freedom granted to a country, is our Republic of Liberia. The Commonwealth of Liberia was an oppressive, almost like a reservation or township type of style governance over African people of African descent, whereas the 1840 Constitution made us a sovereign state. Under that sovereign state, Article 3 says all men have a natural, unalienable right to worship God according to the dictates of their own consciences, without obstruction or molestation from others. All persons deeming themselves peacefully and not obstructing others in their religious worship are entitled to the protection of law in a free exercise of their own religion. It goes on to say, and no sect of Christians shall have exclusive privileges or preferences over any other sect, but all shall be alike tolerated, and no religious test whatsoever shall be required as a qualification for civil office or the exercise of any civil rights. This is Liberia. And so I had to point that out to say, just because people are ignorant of the laws that establish and the principles that establish the country doesn't mean that they are correct. And I know why Muhammad said what he said, because people behave as though our constitution for the Republic of Liberia is the same as that situation with the Commonwealth. But part of the reason Liberians exercised their independence was because of the oppressive regime that they were living under. There's a reason 1847 made us a country. This is one of the principal ones. It's the third article. The third article. It's not buried somewhere down in the bottom in some footnote. So this is what I needed to say. So thank you, Mohammed. But I want everyone to realize that this is not this way because of law. It's because people are violating the law. The other thing I'd like to say is to answer your question. Historically, and identity politics it's a natural thing, Dennis, and it's affected elections many ways. And as Mr. Sirleaf correctly said, and I completely agree with him, identity can be almost anything, right? You can identify as a woman, you can identify as just an African person. That's identity politics as well, and that transcends boundaries. That transcends borders. If you're an Africanist, you're a global Africanist, and your politics are about African people. Your identity could be as broad as being African. Most of the people in the Western world, their identity is based on this false consciousness, this false, it's not really a false identity, it's a political identity, but it's not a scientific identity. The political identity of whiteness. The political identity of whiteness is an identity that drives global politics and even the economy, right? And the political identity of Blackness is another thing that drives oppression and where resources are distributed. So identity politics doesn't have to be local, right? All politics should be local, but not necessarily. When you see people in the state of Georgia, the state of Mississippi, the state of Minnesota that identify themselves politically as whites, who are concerned greatly about people all the way in Ukraine, that's not local. That's an identity politics that transcends boundaries. When you see African Americans reaching back to Ghana and having an interest in the well-being of West Africa and Africa as a whole, that's an identity that transcends boundaries. Nobody in Liberia is poor because of the language that they speak. Poverty is not ethnic in Liberia. It's not based on your language or any of those things, right? It is a universal, unfortunate situation that people find themselves in, regardless of the language they speak. Most people, you would think in such a situation, would identify with other poor people and say, you know what, my identity right now is that I'm impoverished, and we need to figure out how to fix it. But what ends up happening is, without having the tools to articulate this, leaders who desperately want to be reelected tug on emotional strings and use words that trigger people and have people galvanize around things that they think are more tangible, like region, ethnicity, religion, all of these things, to rally the troops behind them.
Thank you.
There is not a Liberian citizen that should not be trying to uphold the Constitution as it was written. And if the Constitution is being violated and people's religious rights are not being respected as explicitly stated in Article 3, that is the responsibility of all Liberians to make sure that that does not happen. Not only those who are affected by it.
Thank you.
So identity politics becomes dangerous when your real identity should be that of a Liberian citizen first and foremost. And the common good of your fellow citizens should be what you're looking at first and foremost.
Thank you, Cole. Let me go to Joe.
Honest, if I would come in, if I would respond to something Cole said about the Commonwealth and 1847 post that, of course I understand that. The issue is that religion still dominates our lives in Liberia, especially Christianity still dominates the rest of the religious beliefs in Liberia. I mean, this is the reason why on Sundays that we had to, I'm not sure what's going on here. This is the reason why on Sundays that we had to, close down our businesses and, and not perform our normal duties because we have to observe all of those religious holidays. So these things have foundation. They're rooted in the foundation of the country. So it is still there. So to somehow state that 1847 cleansed the sins of the past, that is incorrect. 1847 did not cleanse the sins of the past.
Yeah. But Mohammed, I never said 1847 cleansed the sins of the past. What I was specifically saying is that there's a law.
Excuse me. So 1847 was never perfect. No nation is perfect. It's always a project. And so over time, the project can be worked on. Certain things can be sanitized, even in the great United States, even in Russia, even in Japan, even in some of these countries. It was an experiment, and these people in some of these countries are still working on those experiments. So our lives as human beings is dynamic. It's not static. So no, 1847 was not perfect. And some of the things that you see now have roots in the past and up to this day. It's the reason why that, of all the major candidates, you don't have, Dennis is radioactive in Liberia to pick a Muslim candidate as vice president. It's radioactive to have, to have a Muslim candidate because you go nowhere. You're labeled as a foreigner, you're labeled as terrorist, you're labeled as all kinds of things. And this is the reality this is the fact of the matter in Liberia. Look, Dennis, the Civil War, we all know what happened during the Civil War. People were butchered, killed because they were part of the Muslim religion. People were killed because they were part of Mandingo ethnic group. People were killed because they were part of Crowns, and people were killed in the mid 80s because they were part of a group, from Nimba County, and all of these things happen in Liberia. So somehow we cannot continue to sanitize all of these things that have happened. What we can do is to let people know that these things exist, they have happened, and how do we move forward? I think that's what we have to do.
I think, thank you, Mohammed. My only point, of course, all those things are true that you stated. My only point is that the Commonwealth you had cited Commonwealth laws in the foundation, and I had to cite the Article 3 to say that this is not legal. Not to say that it's not happening, but to say it's not legal. There's a difference. Clearly, things happen in violation of the Constitution. A coup d'etat is not a constitutional way of taking power, right? There's nothing in the Constitution that allows for a coup. It still happened. My point here is that many Liberians do not realize that the Constitution does not make Liberia a Christian state. That was my only point.
Thank you.
So everything you're saying is very correct. Being a woman in Liberia, being a Mon woman in Liberia, if you are practicing a traditional religion in Liberia, you're considered a witch. I mean, there's a lot of things that go wrong. You can openly call yourself Muslim, but you cannot openly say, I practice traditional religion, because you are going to be shunned and cast as a heathen. So we know this goes on. But my only point, Mohammed, is to say that we need to understand as citizens that our Constitution does not make this a Christian state.
Thank you.
That was my
neither did I say the Constitution made us a Christian state, but what I did say was that the foundation of all the segregation, all these religious, segregation, all these ethnic segregation.
I didn't say you did. What I'm saying is that people believe that, and I was just making it clear for our audience that is not true.
People believe that because it was practiced, and it is still being practiced. You had a vice president, Jewel Howard Taylor, who as senator went ahead.
You think I will not read the Constitution, Mohammed?
Let me go to Joe.
Dennis, this is very important.
We'll come back to it.
I think what Mohammed's saying is important, Dennis.
No, it's important. I think we get it, right. So
right, you say you get it.
The foundation, right?
You say you get it, but we're speaking to tens of thousands of people in the future. So these things have to be addressed now. Some of these documents right here will be used for historical purposes. Mohammed Sharif does not want to go down as someone who misled, tens of thousands of people, or maybe millions of people, generations yet unborn, when I'm not on this earth. So it is time now to clean up or to go back and reiterate what I said. And I still do believe that our foundation, in terms of religion, when people believe that Liberia was founded on Christian principle, it is wrong. And that's what I said. It's wrong that, for them to say that Liberia was founded. It was never founded on Christian principle. There were people in Liberia before the arrival of our brothers and sisters who came. There were people already there who were practicing their religion. They were practicing different religions. So faith was always present in Liberia. How do we get from there to this discriminatory state where a senator, a senior senator, goes around and collect millions of, well, she said millions. I don't believe that, but she collected signature to turn Liberia into a Christian theocratic dictatorship, to the exclusion of me, to the exclusion of Ahmed, to the exclusion of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Liberian Muslims. And that is troubling. That is something that we have to be comfortable to talk about on these forums. And this is my point. My point is, Liberia has been a discriminatory state for a long time. When you look at religion, when you look at ethnicity, these things still go on. A civil war. A civil war was fought.
Mr. Sharif, thank you. I want to give others the opportunity, since we are, this is the beginning. I want to go to Joe. Joe, where do we draw the line here between what we are describing as identity politics and what others see as divisiveness, tribalism, or nepotism, or just outright sectionalism? Where do we draw the line?
Thank you, Dennis. But I think in the context of politics, when people are preaching the lines of identity politics and ethnicity, well, we have to understand, take a step back and pre-colonial period, do an analysis of the African setting, right? Our people live together. Our people identified based on ethnicity, right? So we have people who speak similar dialects, found themselves living within the same region, and those who share similar values also found themselves living within the same community. So that sort of settings before the coming of the colonial masters that came and divided our people and brought to us this Western, I'll call it pro-Christianized democracy, if I would say it that way, and that sort of kind of divided our people to a larger extent, wherein the ethnicity was being exploited and manipulated by the colonial masters. So, but bringing it back to present-day Liberia, that political setting, right? People will always preach ethnicity in politics because it does matter. It is inescapable, and it is not unique to Liberia. It goes in Ghana. The Ghanaian election is heavily influenced by ethnic lines. In Nigeria, in Kenya, we saw the bad results of ethnicity in ethnic politics in Kenya a couple of years ago. But in Liberia, we always do that. We always preach that one because we have ethnic groups that are significant in numbers, understanding that politics is numbers. I mean, this is a number game. You need the numbers to win. So why wouldn't I play the political card or the ethnic card just to get the numbers on my side? So this is something that is inescapable.
Is that a bad thing?
Sorry.
Is it bad?
We have to put a context to it. We have to put a context to it, right? How you use it, if you use ethnicity to create massive discrimination, you discriminate based on tribes and culture or dialects, or, then that's a bad thing, right? But if we recognize that our values, our shared values are based on the ethnic groups that we come from, and these things have to be said. That's why people say politics is local. So, because it boils down to Where do I feel safe? Where do I feel protected? All of these things make up our ethnic ingredients. Because if, for example, why is it Joseph Boyka is picking Jeremiah Kun from Nima County? Now, what is Nima County political relevance? What is Nima County's contribution to the electoral process? How can they influence votes? Of course, the numbers are there. It's clearly that, of course. Now, I'm not sure, but I think Nima has, if not the first or the second, the highest number of voters that register in this election.
Yeah.
So if you want to put the politics, you have to appeal to the sentiments of the Nimbayans to vote for you. So having Jeremiah Kun picked as running mate to Joseph Yuma Boyka, of course, Boyka is sensitive to the numbers and the active politics that play in the country, but not to do it for the worst. That's where it becomes offensive, right? But again, just to a point raised by Mohammed from the beginning, right? I'd like to go back to that. When people are saying Liberia was founded on Christian principle, or Liberia is founded on Christian principle, right? I think Cole made that very clear that yes, 1847 Constitution up to 1986 Constitution made it clear that Liberia, is not a Christian state. But if you go back, and there's a reason why, if someone is arguing that Liberia was founded on Christian principle, you want to take a step back. You look back at why did they even leave Virginia, for example, to get to what is called the land at the time, the Malaguita Coast, how they called it at the time. Why? Now, the formation of the ACS, the American Colonization Society, who were the founders of the American Colonization Society, who funded the American Colonization Society, what influenced that? At the time the settlers left from there, they went back. There was not a Republic of Liberia. There was a land, but there was not a republic. The Commonwealth that was founded was strictly influenced by Christian principles. That makes that very clear. It was highly, and even I think that she was reading from the Commonwealth Constitution. That is crystal clear. They mentioned God. It was clear. They mentioned, I can find the document and read it. They mentioned Christianity. It was very clear. So that formation of that Commonwealth, it is out of that Commonwealth that resulted into what we call the Republic of Liberia. So it is very clear. It is very common for someone to get lost in the details and will argue that, okay, this Liberia that we have was founded on Christian principle. But by law, Liberia is not a Christian state. Historically, the formation of what we now call the Republic of Liberia was driven and influenced by Christian values. That's what we have to say. So we have to make things very clear. When the settlers, the free slaves, went to Liberia, there was not a Republic of Liberia. There was the land, and that land was occupied by different tribes. I'm of the Grobo tribe. I come from that. We would consider the indigenous. But when the settlers came, there was a time, couple of years back, I think I listened to, I think Abayami Kanga, one historian, who was also arguing that as an indigenous person, he feels that he is not a Liberian. Because the Liberia that we know today was a Liberia that was founded on the Mayflower. They came with that concept. And that's the reason why when they founded Liberia, the indigenous were heavily separated from the state. We saw discrimination. All of these things, I'm saying these things, although these are not things we want to be proud of as our history, but this is our history. We have to say it, we have to know it, and we have to draw the line as we provide the education. We have to acknowledge it. Just as racism in America, although it is bad, slavery was bad, but it has to be acknowledged, and we have to have a point where we draw the lines. And I just thought to throw in that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know we'll get little, because this is it's always good to give the historical context. So I can't stop you. I was not trying to stop you, Mohammed, but let's just be brief so we can get to the point. Dr. Duke, we saw a lot of this in politics now, the identity politics. To what extent is this really true? that okay, let me pick someone from Nimba so Nimba will vote for me, or let me get someone from the Bassa belt so I can win Bassa. Is it something that we just perceive, or is it something that really happening? Is our politics or the way we vote, is it really influenced by our ethnic groups, our religion, and everything in between, or we just think that way?
Maybe I think we probably think that way, and to a certain extent, it is true. Uh, but it's funny that nobody is running after a Monserrato candidate, VP, although it has the biggest number of votes, because there's no identity in Monserrato County. Everybody's everyone. Everybody can come and fish and get what you want. But Nimba is perceived to be sort of unilateral, uh, people who follow one man, sort of since the end of the war. That they have one man who personified bravery, who personified redemption, who personified heroism, kind of, in the person of Prince Johnson. Is it good or bad? But that impression exists in the Liberian politics, and in the absence of real ideology, where people, come around issues, present issues that say, okay, this is transformative. We need to do this. People go back to the basic identification process, which is who speaks like me, who thinks like me, who prays like me. And Nimba seemed to be that place where people probably think that everybody will vote the same way, although you can't be certain. Well, I remember when Kong May won the last election against Miss Red, he won by 4,000 votes, and those represented the 5,000 votes that Wombe had gotten. If he had worked with her, maybe Prince Johnson candidate would have been beaten, which was Prince Johnson candidate and the CDC candidate at the time. So I don't think, it's just a thinking. I think people really believe it. You say if you follow Prince Johnson in Nimba, it's possible that you get at least 40 to 50% of the vote in Nimba, with the older people who are traditional, people who follow that kind of thing. And then the rest will be divided among other candidates. But there's nobody in Monserrato County with 1 million voters that could say, okay, I can bring you 900,000 votes in the Monserrato County. There's nobody like that. So therefore, it is a reality. It's a reality of our politics. It works somehow, but sometimes it doesn't really work.
Right, and Dr. Duke, that's why I want to hold you, right? Because sometimes there are a lot of factors that are in play. And we sometimes think, and let's use Nimba, for example, where we think this is a homogeneous group. And I like how the American can call it, they say homogeneous. So people think like that. But in Nimba, you have so many ethnic groups, you have so many interests, you have so many beliefs. So even by one person saying, well, let me pick somebody from Nimba and everybody else in Nimba will follow me, is a way of maybe discounting other factors that are in play.
Well, it's not really discounting other factors. I think it just, as Wilson was saying, elections are about numbers. The greatest number of people in Nimba are the Gill people, and they're known to follow Prince Johnson. So if you take those 40% of Gill people out of Nimba votes, the rest is still up for grab. Anybody can grab some, but the biggest black block is with Prince Johnson as one group, unless it's proven totally wrong in the next elections. But so far, yeah, I think it does work. And I think it's because of that group. If Prince Johnson belonged to one small group in Nimba, like the Mandinkos, or probably a minor or somebody else, one of the or even the Kru people who migrated to Nimba, I don't think it would have been had the same impact on the politics, on the local politics. And I would like to add something. Talking about these Christian principles and all of that is something that people made up. But you can recognize that when somebody like Lord Carey came, I think 1820, 20-something, 21. These were the first group who planted the flag and then the Christopolis name and all of that. But he was a preacher. He had made a name as a preacher in the U.S. He was a slave. They allowed him to read and write. And then he became a preacher. And then he said, I'm going to Africa. If I have to die with the savages, I'll do that. If I have to die with savage animals and savage men, that would be it, but I'm not going to stay in America. So he went to, so at night, he was fighting people, the day and Vi and other people. But in the morning, he was preaching. And in the afternoon, he was teaching kids, including some native boys and girls that he had in his school. So he was a religious man. So he saw this as a redemption, a return to the Holy Land, or whatever you call it, the promised land. And these were the people at the beginning. Ashmont, these are all people were church people. So that's the impact he had on the creation of the country. And beside those preachers and pastors, nobody else in the group knew anything. The rest were masons, tailors, shoe shine boys, and people who were just tired of living in America and wanted to go someplace else.
Thank you. Admin, let's bring this home and into politics. Let's look at what went on in Bassa, right? And look at the selection. We saw the Yombli Kanga thing, that when Yombli Kanga was like, she was falling off with Joseph Newman Boakai, Mr. Cummings seized the opportunity, right? Because either for Liberty Party or for Bassa vote. When that didn't work, the second choice was, okay, let me take Charlene with the Bromskin factor and still Bassa vote. And during the announcement of Charlene Bromskin, Councillor Charlene Bromskin, and then Westonga Finley, I mean, you could hear everybody saying Bassa, 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 Bassa. What you make of that? Is that considered division or just good politics?
Well, I mean, they made a strategic decision to go to, they had announced in Nimba that whoever they'll settle on as a running mate, they will go to the person's village or homeland to name the person. And so when they started making preparation in Buchanan, we knew it was going to be Councillor Charlie Bromsky, right? In terms of campaign politics and strategy and messaging, I thought they made some errors there by really overemphasizing the Bassa land, Bassa land, Bassa land, because Councillor Bromsky, you selected her. You want to promote her as a national candidate. You want to message that, yes, although her father, she's from Bassa, her roots are in Bassa. The Liberty Party's base is in Bassa. Every political party or politician has to have a base. This is her base, but she's really a national candidate. Here's why. And then you promote that. She is an enterprising young woman, educated, young Liberian woman and lawyer. She has done this for the country. She has done this in this sector. You want to promote that national messaging. But they focus on the Bassa land. The Bassa people want their own people. Bassa land, what you say. And then Bessa came and doubled down on that and said, this time around, the Bassa people, they're tired of voting for other people. They will vote for their own. If you ask me, that was a strategic error. Right? That was divisive in a way. There was nothing wrong with them going to Bassa. We all know, get a quote, right? I mean, she's a woman from the Bassa nation and the Bassa ethnicity. We respect that. She has her root there. She's very proud of her story. She has told her story. We all come from somewhere. There's nothing wrong with going home and being proud of a person from this place who has now been elevated to this level. But if you want to win national election, she's now going for District 2 in Grand Bassa County. Cummings is now going for superintendent or a senator for Grand Bassa County. So he wants to be president. She wants to be vice president. And so they should have been projecting her as a national figure, as a national candidate, rather than just overemphasizing the Bassa. So if you ask, yes, that was a little bit of overplay there. They overplayed the Bassa hand, because even the Bassa vote is not monolithic. The same thing, Dr. Dukla, the Gio vote that you talk about with Prince Johnson is not sort of a monolithic vote. Yes, Prince Johnson has had influence on Nimba politics, but we see that is splitting now. We'll see in this election how it goes. Bassa, there's River says Bassa. There are all kinds of different sub-Bassa cultural groups, right? And you know, maybe we can go back and look at the numbers. But somebody was saying not all of those Bassa of different groups voted for Councillor Bromskin in these past elections. And so if that they overplayed that, to me, it was a little bit of an oversight.
Thank you, Joe. Let me go to you. So, talking about playing the Bassa hand. So, in basketball language, they say if you live by the 3 point, you die by the 3 point, right? So now they were pushing the Bassa envelope, right? And now they came back and say, "Oh, Charlene is not able to speak Bassa." So you and now she's kind of fighting back. Say, well, how many people got this, or how many legislations have been passed because people spoke Bassa? So if you push the Bassa side, now they are requiring you to speak Bassa, and you say it's not. So do you think this whole Bassa thing is catching up with them?
Yes, I think this Bassa thing is catching up with them. And to be honest, in my opinion, I think Charlene, I think she took a huge gamble with her political, her political wishes or what she wanted to achieve as a politician. And I think I wouldn't make that decision. I wouldn't advise her to even make that decision, because if you do a strategic analysis and you follow the patterns of the Liberty Party and the quote unquote Bassa influence in the Liberian politics, it is heavily, let me put it this way, it is heavily influenced by Grand Bassa, right? So if you want to be a leader, an influential Bassa leader in the Liberian politics, of course you have to win elections in Bassa, right? Unfortunately, the Bassa numbers right now, as it stands, cannot give us the vice presidency. So if you are playing the Bassa card, which is heavily influenced by Grand Bassa, I mean, it won't take you anywhere. I think that was a disastrous gamble that she made to go along that lines with Mr. Cummings. I would have advised her, stick to your representative base, tread on the legacy of your father, become a representative, become a stakeholder in Grand Bassa County. Then you can play the Bassa politics, because it won't cut across to go to Mangibi County, right? Of course, that Bassa people. It won't cut across to go to Riverside County, because the thing about it is that you see in politics, the construct of our Liberian society, the way we have evolved, every individual that comes to the limelight within our political landscape, right, across our political landscape, you must have a very compelling story to tell. You're not just selling a story, but you are also telling a story that is relatable. And that is the reason why Charlene has come on this immersed criticism, because people are yet to identify the Bassa in her. People are yet to relate to the story that she brings. I mean, Councillor Bronsky brought his own story, and that's what people know him for. But what do people know Charlene for? Those are the issues. I mean, people are questioning, you can't speak Bassa. Those are legitimate questions, because if you want to project yourself as a leader from the Bassa people, then you should be able to communicate with the Bassa people. You should be able to relate to the Bassa people. Speak the Bassa. So these are legitimate questions, and this criticism will always come about because this is the political process, and this is how our politics have been driven. This is how our politics have been influenced. And again, this is not peculiar to Liberia. It is not everywhere. If we have ethnic groups even in the United States of America, where we are, even Barack Obama, there were times people were questioning how black is Barack Obama. So every politics is also based on, if it is not race, it is ethnicity. And if you project yourself as being someone that the people from certain class or ethnic groups should look up to, then there are a couple of deep questions you have to answer, and you have to be able to respond to these things. So if I come here and I say, okay, I'm a black man, and because I'm a black man, so therefore I should represent a black community. Of course, within the black community, people will start to question how black you are. How do you relate to our values? How do you relate to our community? So it is similar pedestal, that Charlene is being placed on, and I believe these are legitimate questions that she needs to answer and respond to. But I thought the decision that she's made politically, I thought is a disastrous gamble.
You mean the decision to go for VP?
Exactly, the decision to go as VP to Alexander Cummings. I thought it was best for her to stick to her representative bid in Bassa and try to win it.
Who doesn't want to go up? But Carl, let me come to you.
God.
Carl, let me come to you. Is that question about, since Mr. Cummings went with Charlene first, Yombly, and then Charlene, because he wanted to get something from the Bassa, as they call it, the Bassa belt or the Liberty Party.
This idea that for you to be...
Hold on, Carl. Is it legitimate for people to ask Charlene to say, okay, give us your Bassa credentials. Can you speak Bassa?
I don't know what you mean by legitimate.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by legitimate thing to require her. And I want to use also Prince Johnson.
Dennis, let's back up, please. I want to understand. What do you mean by a legitimate question?
Is it a fair question to ask Charlene to speak Bassa?
It's an unconstitutional question. It's a lack of civics education. I'm a Mono woman. I do not speak Mono. Dennis Jazz speaks Mono better than I do. How dare anyone tell me I'm not a Mono woman? You know? There are Vai who don't speak Vai.
Argument, though.
No, it is also a constitutional argument, because there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about.
But that's not what they are making. That's what they are asking her.
It doesn't matter if that's what they're asking her. That's what I'm pointing out.
Okay.
I mean,
okay. So I'm pointing out here. I'm pointing out here how people are trying to violate someone's constitutional rights by, as usual, we do just really things against our country, and then we try to justify it. The Constitution is the ultimate law of the land. And we need to continuously point this out. Whenever people are going against this document, they're going against the country, period. I am a Ma woman. I do not speak my language for many reasons, right? And I don't have to speak the language to identify myself as what I am. Charlene is from Bassa. Her people have been in Grand Bassa County. You can go back to her ancestor, who was a Senator, Walter Brumskin, during the time of Daniel Bashir Warner's administration, married to a Bassa woman. This is a person who is so rooted. How many of us can trace our legacy back that many generations? If I go back on my father's side, 3 generations, I'm in Guinea. This is a person who is so rooted in Bassa.
Right.
She should not have to justify that.
Right. But
and we're sitting here.
Carl, she's being sold because Mr. Cummings.
She's not being sold.
Yeah.
Let me say this. Let me say this.
Hold on, Carl. Let me end. Mr. Cummings and Charlene pushed the Bassa envelope so much. Hey,
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. The girl comes from the woman, this educated, Juris Doctorate holding lawyer, is a proud descendant of people who have been in Bassa for more than 7, 8 generations or even more. And we here talking about questioning her Bassa-ness. It's absurd. And so whether it's legitimate or not, it's up to the person who's asking. I think it's a question steeped in ignorance, a little bit of misogyny possibly, you know, because I've never really heard most of these, I've never heard Boykai or Wea or any of these people speak dialect before. I'm not saying they can't speak it. It's not necessary. I never heard, many people speak. I've never heard Prince Johnson speak Gil. How do I even know he speaks it? I've never heard of Babe speak Gil. He speaks English very well.
Yeah.
Dagu English? You understand? I've not even heard Zanzan Kowar speak Bassa. I hear Zanzan Kowar speaking broken English. So what is this thing? And it goes back to where now we're drawing at straws. There should be a legitimate political reason. But I call from Gaklan, Nimba County, I will defend Charlene Brumskin's Bassa-ness. The same way I would defend my Gaklan-ness, okay? The same way I will defend Muhammad Sharif's Zwedru-ness or wherever, you know, this is what you cannot tell people that they don't come from somewhere. You can't do that. I'm not going to sit on this platform and act like this is a normal conversation. It is not a normal, it's not healthy, it's hateful, it's discriminatory, it's the type of stuff that tears our country up. It's not the message I want my children to hear. No Liberian child should be hearing this message. How many of you are teaching your children your dialect? We're talking about a future here. Dialect is important. I would love for us to preserve our languages and our cultures in the context of where it's respected, not in the context of where it divides us. We're sitting there, nobody is suffering because they speak Basa or Mano or any of these languages. That's not the cause of our oppression.
That's Charlene's argument.
Charlene is running for vice president. Charlene is a proud daughter of Basa. The Basa people are some of the oldest people on the Grain Coast, certainly much older than my people on the Grain Coast. And I would not dare put my mouth to say who is Basa or who is not Basa. I think it's an absurd argument.
Thank you.
It's almost questioning a person's Liberianness. At what point does this stop? You know, and this is the kind of thing that we do. But this is a woman of my generation who has achieved great things under circumstances being brought up in exile. Being brought up in exile when your country of birth is in turmoil, focused on her education, accomplished these things, transcended herself to where she is. This is a story for my daughters to look to. This is a story for me to look to because I know what it is to grow up in exile with all of the temptations and distractions and then go home with what you've learned and open up a private business, a law firm, and serve your country. Nobody wants to talk about that. Gee, that speak Basa.
Right. You
It's
can walk
absurd.
through them so they can talk about everything in politics. Let me go to Dr. Duke. Dr. Duke, still on the Charlene thing. Prince Johnson has been able to use this ethnic group or county, very well. Even, in his last sermon, he had a dossier of government officials that are from Southeast, and he listed them, by names. So, and whenever you talk to Prince Johnson, he tried to pull it and say, like, you are talking to Nimba people, and he tried to rally Nimba people around him. And to some extent, it has worked in the past. Now, the whole idea that was hammered in Grand Bassa about Charlene being Bassa, being a Brumskin, and Mr. Cummings wanted somebody from the Liberty Party or from Bassa. Now, people are saying, well, if you want to push this Bassa line, hey, speak some Bassa. Did you walk barefooted? Did you crack pan cannons? And they are asking all kinds of questions. Same question. Are those legitimate concerns? Do people want to feel more? Do they want to feel closer to Charlene by speaking Bassa, even though it's not of a fault? And then Prince Johnson is using the same thing. We are probably the same.
Maybe we should ask who's asking that question. Who's asking her to speak Bassa? Our politics is all in English. Everybody speaks, either broken or high academic English. We don't speak Bassa in our politics. I never heard Brunson made a speech in Bassa.
Not since Daniel Howard.
Yeah. So I don't see the issue. I don't really think that, it's a political thing. When you come on the scene, like she's just popping up, and then you got to find something that's wrong with her. They could say, okay, something wrong with her somewhere. Okay, she's not Bassa. Well, they say Obama was not black or was he not American, but he became president anyway. I think the discussion is, very political, oriented thing.
It's political season, Dr. Duke.
Yeah, it's political. It could work. Opposition could use it and tell Bassa people she's not one of you. But if the Bassa people remember her father, remember what she did and who she is, whoever may remember her, would say, yeah, she's one of us. I mean, she didn't say she was from Nimba. She didn't say she was from Maryland or Zwetu. I mean,
Right.
yeah, she said, I'm from Bassa. And they know she's from Bassa because the name Brooklyn is in Bassa. So I think those things, people make noise about it, but I don't see it any more than, how you say, some kind of attack from political opponents, and they will use it as long as they can. They say, well, yeah, she's not married, or she's this and she's not. All those things will come up.
Yeah.
And then they'll try to beat her down as much as possible, but it's not about her, it's about Alex Cummings' campaign. So that's the issue. But I don't think, it's really relevant, how you speak, what language you speak, or, if you speak Bassa or you don't speak Bassa. I mean, a whole generation of Liberians has grown in exile. Some of them are returning, some of them can't, whatever it is. A whole generation of Liberians, were born in Nigeria, Ghana, US, and some of them, 30, 40 years now, and they want to return home. You're going to ask them to speak Bassa? To start a new sort of discrimination?
And Mr. Dr. Drew, let me push you a little bit before I go to Mohammed, because this is not in a vacuum, right? Well, first of all, before I get to that, Mr. Cummings also, those same questions are being raised by Mr. Cummings against Mr. Cummings. Hey, show me your village in Maryland. And we are talking about identity politics. We are talking about ethnicity. Is there some form of ethnicity? And let me remind you that, or let me tell you that this is not in a vacuum. There's a time when speaking your mother tongue was, people made fun of you for that. So everybody wanted to graduate from speaking your own or language, right? So this is not in a vacuum. So people did not want to learn speaking out of Bassa, Kru, Grebo, Crown, Mende, and so forth, right? Because people will laugh at you. People started changing their names to sound, and that's why in my language we have something called your queen name or your civilized name and your country name. So these things that people are saying today, they are not in a vacuum. I just want you to comment on that.
No, I know they're not in a vacuum, and I think it's some people are trying to go back to a certain age of nativist politics. Say you have to be part of this culture, you have to speak this language if you want to be part of us. And what it is, it's ethnic politics at its lowest level, where you don't make this, your distinction or your attachment to somebody is based solely on the fact that that person speaks a language that you speak, or come from the village that you know, or is related to people that you know. So that's the lowest level of identity politics. That it's like we're not thinking far enough to say, what do I expect from a politician? Do I expect a politician to be somebody who speaks like my grandfather? What do I expect a politician who knows what she is doing in running the country, in running an administration? So we don't get to that level. You don't get to the level of ideology, social democracy, a social, open liberalism, whatever it is, those big complex issues. We don't talk about those issues because we are still at our level of primary identity, the primary identity, which is you speak my language, then you're part of me. And this is a reaction to the old order, because when you talk about identity politics, it was not started by Doe. It started with the Americans. Which, you have to have certain name, you have to have certain ascendants to have certain jobs. In 1979, none of us could imagine Samuel Doe, president of Liberia. Never. I mean, April 11, 1979, nobody could imagine a Doe sitting in a mansion. Are you nuts? Because there was an identity politics. There was a system of political separation. And tribalism comes in because people become tribal because they become exclusive. You keep people out, and people were kept out. So this, what we have today, if I look at Mali, I look at Senegal, even Niger, I follow these countries, their identities are based on other things. It's not, they all speak the same language, almost 99% of them. They all speak, they're all Muslim, so they have differences, but they still have these small identities, but not like we have. In Liberia, it's like because the power was crystallized, maintained in one group's hand for 130 years, it has also consolidated other tribal group identity. So they took refuge into themselves and say, we are creating a new identity against everybody else. So now if you have a Bassa person coming up and say, you have to speak Bassa, it's in reaction to that past and say, you have to prove that you are one of us. So is it bad? Yes, it is bad for politics because it doesn't ask the question, what does she know? Can she write? Can she read? Can she talk? Can she write, issue policy papers and all of that? No, it doesn't ask those questions because our politics is still at the level of primary identity. And that's very sad.
Thank you. Mohammed, let me go to you. And Sam Wallace said something that he said this is called authenticity. So let's talk about all that about politics, the Charlene, the Prince Johnson, and Weah, and everybody else asking Mr. Cummings for his village in Maryland, and all that, right? Is this fair game? Is this divisiveness? Are we? Is it we talked about this before? Is it because we really don't have issues on ideological lines? That's why are we stooping low, or is this, politics as usual?
I think everybody, specifically Carl, Ahmed, and Dr. Dukley, on this subject, put it very brilliantly. It was overplayed, as Ahmed said, by the Cummings campaign, by saying, Bassa people, your candidate, Bassa people, your candidate, make the national appeal, move on from that. You don't want to stay in that territory. And then Carl mentioned something very eloquent, which is, why are you questioning this very accomplished woman, okay, who has, to me, she is better than, who's the vice president now, Joel Howard Taylor? She's better than Joel Howard Taylor. She's better. She is in very better position. Look, I wish there was a debate where, Charlene Bromskin is sitting at the table with Joel Howard Taylor discussing policy. You know how that will be. So she is very, she's better. To me, she's a very good candidate. Someone said that, this is not her time.
In terms of what?
Someone said, I'll get there, Dennis. Someone said this is not her time. So my question to my colleague is, when is her time? When she's 55 years old? When she's 60 years old? No, let us stop that. Barack Obama was told this is not your time. It is her time, right? If she can put the coalition together that Ahmed mentioned, if she can appeal to the Southeast, if she can appeal to the North, if she can appeal to the center of the country, if she can make enough appeal, I quickly want to say that she is a vice presidential candidate. So I don't know how much pull, if Bromskin is underwater, I don't know how much is Charlene going to lift him up. So let's consider that. So your question is, they're asking Bromskin for his village. Again, it's the same.
They are asking Cummings for his village, not Bromskin.
I'm sorry. They're asking Cummings for his village. Mr. Bromskin, peace be on his actress now. They're asking Cummings for his village. Cummings, why are you doing that? And this has been going on forever and ever, right? So, in 1980, you had, the saying, the song was, Congo woman born rogue, native woman born soldier. So you had a uniformity there. You had guys who were all who could speak native Liberian dialects, right? We will all agree with that. But what did that bring us? So let's just say that was our standard, that, everybody spoke, indigenous languages and whatnot, from the head of sit down to, sweet person in the mansion, and they all spoke the dialect. So what did that bring us? So why is that a test now? Why is language a test? That shouldn't be a test. That's a violation of the Constitution. That shouldn't even be considered as a test. And for Cummins to be asked what village is he from, he can quickly knock this down. I mean, but he's also struggling, trying to say, oh, I'm for everybody. I'm this and that and the other. This is an easy argument. There's no requirement for this in the Constitution. Is there a requirement for me to show you a village where I am from? I mean, there's no requirement for that. So all you want to do is you want to question his ideology. Where does he stand in terms of what good he's going to deliver to the Liberian people? And I think that Dr. Douglas said we can't even move on, right, to get to ideology. We're still stuck here. We're still stuck about language. We're still stuck about, can you speak this language? Can you speak this native language? What can you can you speak a word or two? And so the Cummings campaign, to their really discredit, they overplay it, by saying, Bassa, this is your candidate, but everybody that got up, including Comrade Louis Brown, which I was surprised because he's very much aware politically. He also, fed into all of this. And I think that it's dangerous when we're moving in that direction.
Can I ask you a question? Is it possible that it's an overreaction to what we'll call the elephant in the room, that they overcompensate the fact that two of them are, we said, American Liberian names, prominent, and therefore they have to overcompensate by pushing the Bassa narrative? I'm just asking a question.
I think so. And Cheryl, Mr. Sally, let me add to that so you can answer.
Yeah.
Also, we were talking about constitutional requirements. Okay, for a voter, I don't know how many voters ask constitutional questions. Here we say, okay, which of the candidates I can drink beer with? So I see speaking the language or being able to attend the same primary school or playing. We all play on Tusa Field in New Jersey. I see that who is relatable and who can I trust to represent my interests. I think that's what the people are asking, and not so much of constitutionality.
Yes, it's look. I advise political candidates. I have worked on campaigns here in the U.S. and in our region in West Africa, right, from Ghana, Liberia to Nigeria. I can tell you, look, it's about. I'm sorry to say, everything you said, Cole said, Dr. Dukla said, and Mohammed is true. This is. I wish we were voting on the basis of her qualification, Commonsense qualification, everybody's qualification. But hello, this is a campaign politics. You first have to be elected before you govern. And in Liberia, and it's like like anywhere, right? It's about that identity politics we started with earlier. How does this person relate to me? How are they relatable? Can I see myself in them? Can I see, like I see the Cummins people, they argue, they want to win all the arguments basically on social media and in studios, and that's fine. What you should be doing, I think you should focus on appealing to the Liberian people, winning that middle votes, those who are in the middle, on the fence, because like I said, elections are won on a very narrow basis. You have your base, your opponent has their base, right? And there are those who are undecided. So you try to appeal to those. Yeah. Why does Biden always talk about I'm from Scranton, where it's let's go Scranton, Pennsylvania. That's where I was born. That's where my root is. He goes back several generations. I mean, look at his age, but he goes back several generations. Why did Obama drop everything when he left Harvard? He was offered a job on Wall Street, but he went to find a home and a base. He went to the south side of Chicago. He did community organizing. He got to know people. He connected with churches and the religious community so that he could say, I am from Chicago. See, I am from those people. I connect with them like them. They are mean. That's my base. It's true everywhere you go. That's what they're asking. We're not asking is Charlene Bassa enough in terms of her family's roots. How deep is it in that region? In the Bassa Belt, so-called Bassa Belt, because they talk about Margibi, River says parts of Montserrado and Bassa and stuff. It's really about relatability. how do you market your candidate? How do you sell your candidate? When we say sell, look, you first have to win election. And then you say, look, how dare you question how much Basso I am? That's unconstitutional. That unconstitutionality, you get to it, I would say, when you are in office. Because it's also constitutional for people to express themselves freely, to associate freely politically, to be able to ask questions, to ask the critical questions, and to identify candidates that look like them, that speak like them, that they believe has some affinity to them, and therefore their vote. Because you see, it's about the psychology of campaigns, the persuasion. Political messaging is about persuasion. How do you get somebody to win? How do you get somebody to vote for you, essentially? When we see on TV here, they're appealing to different groups. If if it's women who are say stay-at-home women or suburban women, the segment the market and do political ads based on those understanding of how do we persuade these people to vote for us. To me, that's what's happening. It's not necessarily the ethnicity of it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday, and we are discussing identity politics. Let's go to the preaching side. Of late, the Senator Prince Johnson has delivered a couple of sermons. I don't know, Carl, whether that was, I don't know if you listened to it, whether that was sermon or hate speech or what have you. And the first time we also saw when he gave his one of his sermons, people went there and said, well, he's been preaching from the pulpit. He's been preaching politics from the pulpit. So we are coming to church. And that disrupted the service, and there was a lot of condemnation, even from the Council of Churches. Now, Senator Johnson has doubled down, and he's still preaching. The last time it was sermon to sermon, we call it, between President Weah and Senator Johnson. In the past, we've heard sermons from other religious leaders like Mother Wilhelmina Dukley, Bishop George Brown, Bishop Parker Francis. How is the Prince Johnson sermon different, Carl?
All men, this is Article 3, and when they say men in the 19th century, they mean human beings, have a natural and inalienable right to worship God according to the dictates of their consciences, without obstruction or molestation from others. It was unconstitutional. You and myself have had this discussion. Your rights end where other people's rights begin. You do not have a right to barge into someone's church or stand across from someone's church and shout loudly enough to disrupt their worship service under any circumstance. You can start your protest after they worship. You don't have a next. I mean, what's going to be next? They're going to be going to people's mosques. They're going to be going to they don't like the other church because it's Pentecostal. Then it was so the Catholic people don't worship like this. There's a reason this is protected in the Constitution. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Whether I like what a man say or not, the fact that he's saying it in a church, it is protected. He is protected. The other people in the church are protected. And I didn't listen to it. I don't watch his sermons. That's not my area. I'm a Methodist. I was born a Methodist, raised in a Methodist church. So that's not my area. But I would say this. I would not want that to happen to me while I'm sitting at Ganta United Methodist Church or anywhere else. I would not like to see that happen to any citizen, whether they are political or not. That is a sanctuary. It is off limits. That's all I have to say about that. What was the other part of your question?
Right. The other part, you said you didn't listen to the message, but he was kind of calling out people about their sexual orientation, about people who their sicknesses. He said, "Come, I will lay hands," and basically attacking. And
so I didn't listen to it, but that like I said, this is something that they're doing in the confines of their church, right? I'm not going to comment on that. I think I'm the wrong person for you to ask that question because there's certain things that I just don't. When it comes to what people do inside their place of worship, I'm not going to comment on it. When he comes outside of the church and he's addressing people, it's a different thing. Right? Mm-hmm. So if your moral and religious beliefs cause you to say something inside your church, this is a sanctuary. When you come outside of that space and you are now functioning as a senator in a country and you're saying this, for example, at the Capitol building, that's a different issue. I'm able to separate that.
Right,
Clearly, I don't agree with any type of violation of the Constitution by anyone. But I'm not going to take what someone says in their sanctuary, their place of worship, and carry it outside and use it as a political thing. I think it's just grimy to do that. And that's my opinion. So maybe ask that question of another panelist, but I'm not going to get into that any more than I have.
Right. But let me ask this before I go to another panelist. What if that person is committing crimes in the church? Will we say, okay, you are within the confines of your sanctuary, so that's your business?
I mean, clearly your rights end where other people's rights begin, right? So I don't think that, religious expression is the same as murdering someone or raping someone in a church, right? So now you're asking a question that is like a straw man argument. It's a completely different thing. It's not. It doesn't follow any kind of logic flow. What I'm saying is, what you're saying inside a sanctuary in the religious context is protected.
Right.
You're now bringing crime into it. That's a different issue.
But now what you do is just what you say.
And now if someone committed a crime in a church, that's a different issue. That's not what we're talking about. Did he kill somebody in the church? Did he touch a little child in the church? What are we talking about here? Is this hypothetical, or are we talking about things that actually happen?
I mean, you can have a author hate speech in the church, stuff like that.
We have hate speech in churches here in the United States all the time.
Okay, good.
I mean, and the thing is, it's protected because it's in the confines of that church, right? This is not the same. There is a line, legal line that you can cross. If you're inciting people to go harm people, you cross the line. If you're espousing religious beliefs that make you say that in your mindset that homosexuality, I don't know what he said. So I'm, like I said, I didn't watch it. But since we're talking hypothetical here and not actual reality, if person A goes into a church and says homosexuality is wrong, it's condemned by God and all this kind of stuff, do I agree with that necessarily? No. Do I have a right to go to their church and interrupt that? No, I do not. But if they stand there and tell people, leave the church and go kill homosexuals, that's a crime. So I don't really think that this is some kind of foggy gray line. It's like a very clear-cut, distinct difference. People believe in certain religious sects that women belong in a certain place. Mm-hmm. They have a right to those beliefs. If they come outside and try to impose that on me, that's a different thing. So it's not something that's ambiguous. It's clear, for me anyway.
Right.
So I'm not going to discuss what the senator talks about in his church because I'm not compelled or forced to watch or attend his services.
That is correct.
I'm not a member of his church.
Joe, let me go to you. I don't know if you watched the sermon, but it was clearly calling out people, by names and talking about their sexual orientation. And of late in Liberia, there have been some, people, there are other people who may be listening who may act upon those sentiments. So what you make of the sermon and the response from the CPP? I don't know if you also read the response.
Yeah, I read the response from the CPP. I did not listen in totality to the recent sermon from Senator Johnson, but I listened to previous sermons, and I also listened to President George Weah, who proclaimed himself to be a pastor. So I think all of what is happening, President Weah sets the basis for all of what is happening. I'm not surprised that Senator Johnson is reacting the way he reacted, because that's where the head of the country, has landed the country. So the church should be a sacred ground. If you use the church as a political place and to manipulate society, and if you cannot address the country when there are pressing issues in the country, and you use the pulpit to address the country and respond to innuendos, then you set the basis for political reactions from political actors who are also religious leaders. That's exactly what Senator Johnson is responding to. And I think this is what the president wants. We all have been around here when President Weah declared himself a pastor. Well, we did not hear the Liberian Council of Churches reacting. we did not see anything. As a matter of fact, influential leaders within the Liberian Christian society have been seen walking alongside with President Weah. I was disturbed when Bishop Isaac Winker made certain statement that if anyone goes against or say XYZ against President Weah, I'm paraphrasing here, that this person probably will die or something disastrous will happen to the person. I mean, I was seriously appalled to hear that because, we have come to the place where I'm a Christian, so I will speak to a larger extent from the Christian side of things. That I think the church, to a larger extent, has lost its voice in Liberia. And all of this is influenced because of people trying to seek political favor from the president. I'm a fairly young man, and when I was growing up, I still remember the voice of the likes of Bishop Michael Packard Francis, late Bishop Alfred G. Reeves, and many others. These were people who stood up, who spoke truth to power. Unfortunately, this is not the same. President Weah have used his pulpit to respond to people. As a matter of fact, when the death regarding the auditors, Abbott Peter and Gifty Lama, President Weah did not address the country at the executive mansion or in the press conference. President Weah used the pulpit to respond to the death of the auditors. In his words, he said people doing boyfriend and girlfriend thing. Can you imagine? And the church
I have a
leaders
quick question.
in that country.
Comrade Wilson, was he talking to the nation or was he talking to his congregation?
He was talking to his congregation and responding to a serious national issue. So he drew the office of the president into a congregation, used a pulpit to address issues when the country was yearning to hear from their leader. And it has been a consistent pattern from President Weah. So Senator Johnson is doing exactly what he's doing. But let me come to the issue of CPP. Right?
But does that make it right, or is it follow the leader?
Well, right where we are right now, it's not about right or wrong. It's about political reaction. That's what it is. So Senator Johnson, I'm not judging Senator Johnson on the basis of religious standards yet. I'm looking at him making a political statement. That is a political reaction. That's what it is. In a normal society, Senator Johnson wouldn't call people names. He wouldn't. How long has he been saying that?
Now y'all making me want to go watch what he said.
Of course. So, but let me speak to the hypocrisy. Let me speak to the hypocrisy from the CPP. So when the incident took place at Senator Johnson's church, the reactions from folks, I saw folks from the ANC, specifically I saw posts from Moriah, Chief of Staff to Mr. Combs. She made this post, and I specifically commented on that post. I said, but these are things that are coming from you, someone who should be a chief of office staff to someone, a supposedly mainstream political leader. They were picking and choosing, spreading half truth about Senator Johnson. Instead of condemning holistically the acts, but people were referring to Senator Johnson's past. Senator Johnson, former rebel leader, XYZ, calling him names. Right? So I thought that would have been a collaborative effort from the opposition committee. I say, hey, listen, we may not be in the same side with Senator Johnson, but what happened is uncalled for. But I believe after public backlashes was released, they came back and tried to spin up a new narrative. But when Senator Johnson reacted and specifically called out Cummings and several other things, then they responded in a very derogatory way. So I think the hypocrisy is that because you are not with me, you are evil. But when you're on my side, you are the good guy. And all of this is aligned with the ethnic identity we are discussing here. Senator Johnson takes refuge in his ethnicity. Of course, like Dr. Douglas said, politically in Nima, who we have been following, the Gio votes in Nima has consistently outnumbered, to a larger extent, the Mana vote. And we know that there's some sort of division between the Gio and the Mana. That's within. 2010, I found myself working in Nima at some point, and there was the debate which was trying to divide Nima, upper Nima and lower Nima, and you could see that the Guilds were on the other side, the Manos were on the other side. So all of these little internal wranglings, all of these are interfering with our political discourse. That's why people are making decisions first based on ethnic lines. Until our country can reach at a stage where we will sell our candidates now on the basis of what county he or she comes from. I want to go back again to the point, not to divert, but go back to the point of and the questions that were asking the Mohammed, listen, I'm not sure if you follow the CPP the convention. When they were asked the question, where will you name your vice presidential candidate? So they said, we prefer to name this individual based on the county he or she comes from. There is a political message that they were sending. And that is the reason why people are questioning Charlene, because they try to sell a narrative and project Charlene as the leader of Bassa-Land, Grand Bassa of Bassa-Land. So it is not out of ignorance when the very Bassa people are beginning to question Charlene how Bassa you are. It is not out of ignorance. Because when you project a leader of the Bassa land, of the Bassa people, then the Bassa people have legitimate right to x-ray you, cross-examine you. Can you speak the Bassa? Can you communicate with our people outside of Buchanan? These are questions people have to ask. So I think the narrative that was sold, it is the backlash from the narrative that people are asking questions.
I don't think that you're
go back and repackage, rebrand, and sell something different. This is not a constitutional issue. This is a political issue.
So if a white missionary speaks Bassa, that makes him more Bassa than Charlene Bronskin. I mean, what is this thing with language? Y'all come on, man.
If the white missionary,
this is a historically a person that has even been in Bassa that could trace for generations going back to the early 19th century. I don't know how many of us in the early 19th century, our ancestors were speaking the languages that we profess to be from today. Some of us, if we go, it is the very point.
No, it's not
as we always say on the Liberian History Channel, ethnicity is fluid. Liberia has never had some unified so-called native population. Okay, we have always had a multi-ethnic. The Grain Coast, the Pepper Coast, always has had multiple nations coexisting in war and cooperation, conquering one another, doing all kinds of things to one another for many generations.
That is not a conversation.
So this whole idea.
Let's set this.
It is the conversation, because before we talk about ethnicity, let's define it and its fluidity and the fact that it's not stagnant. The fact that it's not stagnant. Right now, if I go stand up in Mali and I wear certain clothes, they will not know I'm not from Mali. Let's stop this thing, man.
But if you go to Mali, stop this thing. You are the leader of the Malian people. You're telling me the Malian people don't have the right.
If I was born in Mali and my ancestors can trace back to Mali multiple generations, nobody in Mali will question my Malianness.
Okay.
Let's be honest
Mali
here.
And try to contest political leadership in Mali. Go and
y'all focus. We can't talk about Charlene Bronskin and her tremendously profound education. We can't talk about Charlene Bronskin dosing the bar exam, whipping all the women and men who sat at the bar. We don't want to talk about that one. We don't want to talk about her legal understanding. We don't want to talk about what she has learned to prepare herself for leadership. We want to talk about how she can she can speak a language that isn't even spoken the same way it was spoken just 100 years ago. How many people could speak Bassa with their ancestors and even be able to communicate? Y'all get up from here. The language isn't even the original language that was spoken. It has been changed. How about that? How about y'all talk like your ancestors first before we start talking this thing here? Y'all leave a small room.
They did not say Charlene Bronskin on the basis.
Hold on, Joe.
Let me just let my talk. We're coming, Dennis. Charlene Bronskin was never sold on the basis of the education she acquired.
She doesn't have to be sold. She stood up and she's in a position. She wants to lead. She wants to lead the country. She wants to be the number 2 person in the executive. Nobody is selling her.
She wasn't sold. She wasn't sold on the basis of her accomplishments. They projected her on the basis of her ethnical background.
And
that's what they projected her. And that is why
Mr. Cummings
all sense of reasoning it is
let's move on. Dr. Drew, come back.
Yeah, I'm coming back.
All right. Ms. Mohammed, Joseph Newman Boakai, this condemned or called Prince Johnson out for his sermon.
I don't know if he will, but the brother just said that George Weah set the stage for this kind of evangelism.
And that's why we have the rescue team and the fixer. So we can no longer be going to George Weah as the standard.
Yeah. So let me just speak about that a little bit. So for a long time, for quite some time, the pulpit has been used where church leaders have not only advocated for the poor, they've talked about the ills of the Liberian society. Dennis, if you go back in recent Liberian history, Mother Douglas was an example, and I can cite Reverend Father Hickey, who was declared persona non grata by the military.
And Mohammed, let me interject that there were also preachers who did the opposite, right? Like there was one who said President Doe was the Moses. They compared, they said President Doe demonstrated Christ-like quality. So there were some preachers who were like, the president is God, and we see that in this
there was a preacher who something happened, I think one of the schools in Monrovia, and the president went there, and then the preacher said, when this thing happened, when we blink our eyes, the president was already here. He is, that's the reason why we think he's chosen by God. And so these were the flowery, acclamation, if you will, that, some of these went into how we end up with the dictatorship of the 90s. The way we end up with that dictatorship was because the contribution of church people, some of the church people, not all of them, religious people, not just church, Muslims as well. So, that's how we end up with the situation that we end up with. But at the same time, Dennis, there were other religious people like Reverend Father Hickey who stood up for justice. There were the Mother Douglas and so on and so forth. And I will add that the Liberian Council of Churches during the Civil War, you have, Bishop Francis, Michael Bakla Francis, you have Sheikh Kafumba Konek, people, religious leaders who travel when it was very dangerous in Taylor's territory in Barclay and talked to Mr. Taylor to lay down his arm when it was very dangerous at the time. These religious leaders, I will argue, should have collectively won the Nobel Peace Prize, but instead they gave this Nobel Peace Prize away to Lima Bowie and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, which I didn't agree with. Sheikh Kafumba Kone and others were very deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize. So that's just going to show you how not all church leaders have used the pulpit in the manner that it's being used now. But again, what Prince Johnson said, it's comical because after Prince Johnson's statement, and then Mr. Cummings' group then decided to put out a statement that was very ridiculous, right? They're saying now that, using the kind of language that they should not have really used themselves. I mean, they're saying that Mr. Cummings is committed to. When did Mr. Cummings tell you during your interview with him that he's committed to war crime court? Did he tell you during that interview? Mr. Cummings has individuals like Daniel Cheer. Is Mr. Cummings going to send Daniel Cheer to the Hague? See, that's the hypocrisy. Somebody talk about hypocrisy. That is the hypocrisy of this whole thing. And it exposed the CPP. I was surprised that, that this issue sort of exposed them. And they should not have gone down that route with Prince Johnson. I don't think. I don't think they should have gone down that route. Mr. Johnson was in his church responding to situations. Keep in mind now, situations created by who? The president of the Republic of Liberia, George Weah. And nobody tonight is talking about George Weah and the things that he has done in the pulpit. George Weah now cannot speak to the nation anymore. He goes to the church. This is where he's hiding from the Liberian people. And then he goes ahead and deliver, this kind of sermon. He's not, he's not a preacher, George Weah is not. You're the president of the Republic of Liberia.
Well, to be fair to the president, Prince Johnson's sermon was worse than Weah's sermon.
Okay, Dennis, I will grant you a few things, right? I will do that. I will grant you a few things. I mean, some of the language was worse. But this is the way Prince Johnson will speak. Quite natural. This is the way he will speak. So you, as the president of the Republic of Liberia, you set the standard. This is the reason why time and time and again on this show, we said that the president sets the agenda. When we've talked about that, president set the agenda. The president is the role model, or should be the role model for the rest of the nation. So when you see the president do this kind of thing, so if a Prince Johnson goes ahead and say what he said, which I don't condone, but if he said what he said, and we're not talking about the initiator of this. I think there is a problem. George Weah laid the basis for all of this, and I think that that's where we're supposed to start. We're supposed to start this conversation with how did we get here? How did we get from Reverend Father Hickey, who was a vociferous opponent of the military regime, who stood up for the poor people, and to the point where he was declared persona non grata and expelled from Liberia? How do we go from there to now? So that's where we have to, structure this kind of conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dukley. And I asked this question. So there was ethnic groups that were targeted during the Liberian Civil War. And when we hear language from Prince Johnson and other Buakai supporters saying people from the Southeast don't fit to be president, or they don't fit for leadership. And we've not heard anything from Mr. Buakai saying, no, don't go that route because we know what this brought upon us. We also see Prince Johnson in his church in support, in that same sermon, he's declaring support for Mr. Buakai over and over. At the same time, calling people names, calling out Alexander Cummings, my former classmate Lafayette Gould, the Eugene Nambwe, and saying all kinds of things. And do we expect to hear anything from Mr. Buakai?
Well, what do you expect to hear from Buakai?
Condemnation.
To say, Prince Johnson, you were wrong, saying these things in your church? No.
Yeah, and disavow him.
No, he won't say anything, of course. Just like, Cummings people reacted their way. Everybody got their own political agenda, and they say, okay, yeah, Prince Johnson said it, so what? He didn't say it to me, he said it to somebody else. This whole thing is about, the stupidity of our politics. We are now sitting down talking about what Prince Johnson said in his church and how that affected national politics. And it is bad. I don't think Buakai would say anything. I don't think he would say, don't do this again. Just like Cummings.
Should he say something?
Would not say, oh, you did something wrong. Cummings did not condemn the people, the NPP people. And Buakai would not condemn Prince Johnson. So everybody take their side. We talk about this, this whole political thing about who's fit to be president, who's not fit, and who's good leader, who's not. There's no way you can do politics now in Liberia without getting involved with the people who fought the war, who were part of the war, or who were part of one system or the other. They're all the same thing. So I don't see Buakai apologizing. I don't see why he would. It's not his problem. Prince Johnson said his things. He said a lot of stupid things before, like the president said it, same thing. So, you go on your campaign and you responded to it as a campaign person and said, this is how, if I were Cummings, I saw the response, I wouldn't have responded to Prince Johnson. I would have dismissed it. Sometimes you dismiss these things and then you go on to bigger things.
Right.
You don't try to break every single egg that somebody throw at you. Sometimes you just say, okay, the man is known to make this kind of statement. So what? And you go on. There's another theory. I mean, this is also politics. Sometimes you go say something. Somebody will go put something in a small paper to insult you. Nobody heard about it. But you, in reaction to that small little thing in that small paper that not even two people read, you go put advertisement in a bigger paper on the radio, and then everybody know what was it the story about. So you work, campaign use that. Put something in a dime paper, you pick it up and you try to sue me. I know it's false, but it's not going to go to court, and you're the one who people say, oh, that's true. Even if it's not true, people say, maybe there's something there. Oh, we got to look again. So Prince Johnson is doing his game. He's playing his game. So maybe people should start to look at it from a different angle and not just react and then call, Prince Johnson name. People calling Prince Johnson name. NPP, without Prince Johnson, NPP would have not been president. I mean, CDC would not be president today. As far as the other group concerned, everybody wanted Prince Johnson. Everybody wanted Prince Johnson. So, but now nobody, he chose his camp. Everybody say, oh, he's bad. He's a warlord. Yeah, he's a warlord. We know that. But he's in the Senate. Everybody see him in the restaurant. He go out, he go preach. Nobody throw a rock at him. So what's the problem?
Right.
Because he chose side.
Tell me something I don't know, right?
Tell me something I don't know. Yeah.
Mr. Salim,
he walks freely in the street. He goes everywhere he wants to go. Nobody behind him. Nobody's throwing rock at him. So now he chose side. Everybody say, oh, he's a warlord. We have warlords. We have plenty of them everywhere. Criminals and warlords, people who stole money, who kill people. You see them every day in Monrovia. Nobody give it tooth. He's not the only warlord in the country. They're still there. They're in every single party, including the CDC. The same people who advise Joe are the same people who are advising.
Dr. Duke is passionate about this.
No, I mean, the same people who advise Joe, the same people who advise Taylor are the same people who are advising Ware.
Right. Yeah.
And in every political party, we have the same people moving around. They move around like a chess game. They go left and right, depending who may be winning, who may be losing. One day somebody's a criminal, the next day say, oh man, let him be, man. He's not the only one.
Mr. Salif, how much of this, I would say, chaos, or as somebody, as Dr. Duke put it, stupid politics, we expect to see? And let me give you some examples here. So you saw Prince Johnson made this, it's like he is throwing a bait. It's like everybody's expecting what Prince Johnson will say, and people are even laughing. Now, Mr. Cummings and the CPP responded with a 2-page paper, right? And calling out Prince Johnson has killer and war crimes and all that. In fact, they've made broken news in that. They say, well, when on day one, he's going to appoint a prosecutor for war crimes. That's news to us, right? So this is coming out as a result of what Prince Johnson said. Never mind, you signed the Ganta Declaration 2017 with this man you are describing as such. You gave his university $50,000 or $25,000, depending on who you talk to. Or you pursue Jeremiah Kuhn to become your vice president and say, okay, talk to my father. You knew that this man was the way you describe him, a warlord, a killer, he killed Tecumseh Roberts and all that. We also see on the government side, Jefferson Koji just made a speech threatening people in government who, in his words, are kind of going towards the opposition. And he's making these kind of speeches. I'm like, where is this going?
Yeah.
We are even hearing the president, we are saying, hey, I don't want to be president anymore. if you want me to be president, you go out there and campaign. That's the rumors. But
Yeah, and we saw Ambassador McCarthy yesterday
he's back
issue,
again.
yeah, his final press release and press briefing where he called the incident at Senator Johnson's church nonsense, which it was, and but also condemned some of those sort of political jargon you're talking about. Look, unfortunately, we'll see more of this. This election, I'm fearful for Liberia. People are desperate. If you think the CDC would take this line down, you got to think again. You know, the elections, it's. Yeah, I'm really fearful, and you so answer to your question is, unfortunately, we'll see more and more of negative campaigning and negative political speech making, and divisive more and more of divisive politics. That said, campaign politics is usually, is not a child's play. They say the fighters are the ones who win elections. Even in democracies that have done this time and time and again, right? They really get down to it to be able to get on top. So yeah, so we're seeing on the CDC side, the Mayor Kweji is threatening, like literally, like issuing real serious threat. Where at one point he said this is about life and death, and I'm thinking, how is it life and death in terms of you want to win to save Liberian children, to save pregnant women, to move the country forward? Yes, that's life and death, right? If people are not corrupt, people are not plundering the country, resources are going towards services are being provided to citizens. Yes, that's life and death. But if it's just the politics of it, that people are in the government and these people, he called names, right? The Minister of Justice. We heard that you've been promised salary to maintain your lifestyle between now and the election. We know you. We've heard the story, and you, Minister of Transport, and the people of Foreign Affairs. Our party chairman said not to go after them, but we know. And he said, this is serious. There are consequences will come after you. This is about life and death. Now, that is political threat. Look, electoral violence is a serious thing of concern in this election circle. Electoral security for Liberia, whatever we can do, our government can do. Political leaders, people who are running the surrogates, the apologists, they need to understand that you govern when there's peace, right? We all need Liberia. Doesn't matter who wins, who becomes president, to the ordinary people in the street there. And it matters to them, yes, but what matters most is peace, because they got nowhere else to go. But unfortunately, because people are so desperate, everybody, if you don't look, you can pick any party, right? I mean, you can pick CPP / ANC. They're desperate. They can see the strategy. CDC is desperate. It's seeing signs that the people are unhappy with the way they've governed, some of what they've not delivered on, some of what they promised, but they haven't delivered, and some of how they're selling themselves and things like that, the economy and so on, because they're running on their record. So we should just tighten our belt and our lapas and whatever we wear and get prepared and see, because this, it will get rough before it settles down. Can't hear you, Dennis.
We'll take 3 calls. Thank you very much. We'll take 3 calls from our viewers, but let's take 40 seconds to just remind ourselves that we are one people.
Our country, sweet Mandela, our country, that God gave all this country. That God gave all this country. We are calling on everyone here to come and pray for this country, Liberian. God gave all this country.
Welcome back on Tough Talking Thursday. We are discussing identity politics. Sorry, Comrade Joe Wilson, he has some constraints, and so he had to leave. But let's take few calls here. The first caller here is Morris Gassama. Morris, you're live. Go ahead. You have 59 seconds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jar. Thanks for the show. I don't know. Let me disagree with my sister a little bit. Because, Dennis, if I start on your show and speak bad English, you will probably not even allow me to come back on your show because you expect me to speak good English. But when I don't speak my dialect, there's nothing wrong with that. Look, politics, you guys are discussing politics. You all agree that politics is local. The country itself is divided on tribe. Liberia is a tribal country. Liberia is a traditional country. So we have to discuss tribe. And while the country is divided by counties, by tribes. Now, if I go to Niba County, talking to the people, seeking their support, if I don't speak Bassa, if I don't speak Gyo, or Kran, or Down, I'll be pardoned. Because why? They don't expect me to speak. But if I'm from that county, if I'm speaking to the people, they expect me to speak to the language that they will understand. It's just simple. So we are saying that, I think the argument is that the VP to Mr. Bronsky from Grand Bassa County, when she goes to Grand Bassa, she has to relate to the people in the language that you understand. And this is just simple. You people can intellectualize it all you can, but we are discussing politics. Look, lastly, the revolution of Frank Stano said you have to speak to the people with the people the language they understand. But again, you can live in denial all you can, but it's politics.
Thank you.
You have to communicate with the people the language they understand. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much. Elvis, Morris, quickly, let's do this. We are out of time. Go ahead, Elvis.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. John. Hello to the panelists. And just to kind of echo what the last caller said, I'll go a little bit more meta. When you even look at the Quran talks about how, every people have their own prophet that was sent to them who spoke their language. So I will echo in that same sentiment, because the reality is, yes, those of us who are in the United States, we have evolved somewhat, so not looking at, quote unquote tribal politics. But those people who are in Liberia, it's important to them. People in Bassa, primarily in certain villages and places, they only speak their dialect. But most of them can't understand English too well. So if you're going to convince them to vote for you and why they should vote for you, you have to be able to speak in the local vernacular so they can understand you and relate to you. Again, that's why we see Mr. Cummings is having trouble in terms of cutting across, and penetrating.
How you know you're having trouble?
Well, because you can see for his lack of support.
How you gauge that? You do any scientific poll?
Because I get shut down. Don't put me in the box. I want to get myself.
All right.
Maybe my quick 2 cents.
Okay, good.
But lastly, the whole thing with Prince Johnson, Prince Johnson calling Alexander Cummings gay, and by association, Charlene Bromsky must also be gay since she's supporting Cummings. You don't do that. You don't put people together by association. A person who supports a political party doesn't mean that, whatever the leader of that political party is involved with, be it true or not, is also endorsing that. That's the same thing we say about Jeremiah Cohn. Since he's so close to Prince Johnson, the both from the same political party, we try to tie him with Prince Johnson and some of the things that Prince Johnson did in the past. And everybody says it's wrong. Jeremiah Cohn is not Prince Johnson and yada yada. But he's using that same rhetoric. So it's the politics of Liberia. The same way Prince Johnson do his politicking is how we do our politicking, and it's just the Liberian way of politicking. So I'll leave it there. But overall, I think this is called "Men on Fire" today. I don't know if I agree with her stance on Charlene Bromsky. Not, we shouldn't judge her by if she can speak the dialect or not. But so far, good discussion. Everybody's been on fire. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Paul. That's it. Go ahead, quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. John. So first of all, Prince Johnson, the whole incident was unprovoked. Mr. Thomas or the people did not do anything to him for him to, governor and something. It's not the first time. So the people response was very appropriate because one woman did not go crazy child. And so I'm going to put that aside. Now, when it comes to the whole tribalism, this is the new brand of the Unity Party. That's the capitalist party. The capitalist. So, you're going to be exposed, this election. But if tribalism works, the other would have been elected. Charles Taylor would have been elected. So they're going to try, by the end of the day, the pain that people are going through. Charlie Brunson are just in the studio where the only people are talking about the pain, Mexican Bassa, and the young lady come from Grand Bassa. She said, people have been speaking Bassa all along. What have they done for us? They want to come and speak the Bassa. After we vote for them to go back to Mount, I don't see them again. So tribalism will be exposed. The people are suffering. People are looking for who will come and solve their problem. People have been victim mass for so long, Mr. Dennis. So now, if Mr. Wagabi is going to win this election based on tribalism, it's going to be exposed.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Let's get our friend from Bassa, Mr. Trogon Bayou. Trogon, go ahead.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you to Cole. Cole, thank you for your defense in defense of Charlie tonight. You said it all right. What people don't know of what they are not realizing here is the threat. Lots of people get along with every tribal group in Liberia. They get along very well with everyone. But if the Bassa people do not identify or associate themselves with identity politics, well, like I said a long time ago, I called on this show and said they have become a thing in Liberian politics that Liberians are not practicing identity politics. For this reason, the Bassa people will rise up this year, this election, and the Bassa bloc will vote for their own. I said it, I'm a clerk of Bassa man. I'm not just a typical Bassa man. I'm a son of one of the most respected Bassa men from our country, Joseph M. Bayou. So I know what I'm talking about. The second thing here is the issue of Unity Party policy, preaching this identity politics, tribalism. A late councilor Bronson told us before and accused Joseph M. Weka of being a tribalist, and saying that this is the only ticket they can run on. Okay, Nima County, right? If Prince Johnson believes that Nima people should support their own, why is he asking Jeremiah Kuhn to be VP to Joseph Weka when you already have the most, I can say, the best qualified Liberian to come out of Nima County in recent time to run for the presidency? What's the name?
Gonglo.
In the race. Yeah, he's in the race. He was in Indiana here a week ago, and I met with him personally. And this man is good. So why did Jeremiah Cohn to run against him? Because he want to divide the Nima vote. For that reason, the Unity Party is going to be the loser. They're not going to win Nima County. They're not going to win Grand Bassa County. They want to do the same thing with Yumley. They're not going to win Grand Bassa County with the exception of North County. I don't know what to do. The Unity Party going to go and win.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to everyone tonight. Great show, and we'll keep watching and wish everyone the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me bring on Aliyu Kamara. I don't think he will agree with you, Trokon. Aliyu, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't have to agree with Trokon. First of all, when you were talking, I just closed my ears. But listen, so my brother over there, Madi, I enjoy the color and the way you can put it. But for us, we all have our mind. We all have things on our mind as to how we want the world to be, how we want our children to be, how we want Liberia to be. It doesn't negate the reality, the natural phenomenon. Tribalism is a natural phenomenon. If you're talking about somebody, whatchamacallit, somebody constitutional right, remember, Liberia is not really a constitutional society. Liberia is a customary society. So, when people say, oh, Liberia has become a tribal and I wonder whether they grew up in Liberia. When you go to a certain town and call your name, the first thing they want to know who your father is, who your mother is, and your mother's village, and then they pull you and put you on their lap and say, oh, that was child here. That is how it has been. what we want it to be. We cannot impose ideas of thinking that it's a superior idea just because that's what we want. I want us to focus on what the truth is. Charlie Brown's skin, look, is she qualified? Yeah, she's qualified. Will she be competent? Now that's the question. Country goes on that show, very sophisticated people in this country to get a simple job, they want a resume. You gotta show them. You gotta convince them that you're qualified to do this job. Let's look at Charlene's resume. Will we just be looking at her passing bar association exam to be a resume to be a president of Liberia? So we have to look at other things. And what amazes me is the fact that Joseph Boga can be sitting now way in his corner in rehab and not saying nothing. Somebody goes somewhere to call somebody to post to Joseph Boga. Prince Johnson is a grown man, 70 years old. Go to his church, practices his freedom of speech, his right to speak his mind. Yeah, everybody alluded to Joseph Boga. Joseph Boga is the one that can push Prince Johnson to talk. All right? So, look, hey, Arizona Communist is a candidate. I don't believe Arizona Communist is gay. Or your friend, Raphael Gu, was the one who started this, started attacking. When you call Prince Johnson a criminal, which he has not gone through any court process to be found guilty, don't you think it hurts his feelings as well? And as much as we might think that we have all the evidence, why don't you take Prince Johnson to court? There is a constitutional provision under our laws.
And Gu is a lawyer.
I mean, there's no statute or limitation on murder. Okay? Go to court. Take this man to court with your evidence. When you're calling you all of these names, don't you think he has feelings too? You call me when you want to call me. And you're saying Boga didn't say nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, you know, the dry red, they say, you know, the pepper and salt with the chicken soup can make dry red sweet. So they will always ask you, what pepper and salt will ever say against dry red? Because dry red need pepper and salt to be sweet. So we don't expect Aliyu to say anything against Boga. Let me get Mr. Percy. Percy Emerson, you have 1 minute, please. Percy, are you there? Okay, let's go to Kalabo Gonglo. Mr. Gonglo, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jar. Great show, great analysis. But here is my take. Unfortunately, I couldn't be on the show tonight. But I tend to disagree with some of the position others are taking. You know, for those of us who grew in the rural area, I will argue that ethnicity is actually an urban phenomenon. Why do I say so? I'm talking about ethnicity being an urban phenomenon in the sense that the use of ethnicity to access top job or other means or in competition in order to gain upper hand. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. If you look at the history of Nimba, when we came out, our people didn't care whether the person is Mandingo or that. We have vast land, we have resources. A stringer time, they give the best part of the time to the stringer. So, come and sit right here. Nobody's sold land to anybody. But as soon as we move to Monrovia, when we enter Monrovia from the hinterland, the first question you ask is, where can I find, when you should realize, where do I find Nima people? You look for Nima community. So if you come from Grand Creek, you say, where do they have Grand Creek people? So if you look in Monrovia, all the communities of people, you find group in certain community, group in certain community, group people, man people, you know, just like that. So ethnicity, use of ethnicity as a means of grouping to access resources, it is actually an urban phenomenon. But increasingly, because of the lack of expansion in the Liberian economy and the job market, politicians are increasingly using ethnicity actually as a means of retaining power. Prince Johnson has mastered that very well, you know. And I've made this point many times on the show, but Dr. Duque keeps going to this point. And I will repeat this again. It's evidential
Prince Johnson's popularity in Nimba is not what really people, Dr. Du will project it to be. When he's on a battle for himself, yes, they do support him. But that's when he support others, that evidence is still shaky. It's still shaky because in 2017, Prince Johnson put 9 representative candidates in the 1-1, and that 1-1 at the Supreme Court. Okay? In 2005, he endorsed Georgia in the second round. Georgia lost. In 2011, legally, there was a runoff election. Technically, there was no runoff election. In 2017, Prince Johnson read the tea leaves. The mood of the country was they did not want to have a territorial unity party. When he saw that, he jumped on the side of the opposition. So this guy is politically opportunistic, So he's championing himself now that, it is Prince Johnson across Georgia to me. He's doing the same thing now. In the country where it's unpopular, why can't see a unity party is an established or wider opposition party? What is he doing? He jumped the shed. He jumped on us. Who is talking? Black guy is not talking. Who is not talking? The party chairman is not talking. The party secretary general is not talking. It is Prince Johnson all over the place. What is he doing opportunistically? He's trying to position himself that I made this possible. If they will even win now, to say that. But this guy is a fortune under politically, and people must call him for what he is.
Thank you, Mr. Gonglo.
Can I say something? Because he called my name.
Let me take the last caller and then you come in.
I could just say 30 seconds. That, Mr. Gonglo, I just said that Prince Johnson could have lost the election. Could have lost the election if the CPP had stayed together in Nimba. So I think you have this thing about Prince Johnson. Whenever you hear the name, you got to put 50, 70 somewhere, and then I didn't say he was the best. I said there is a perception that the Gio vote goes to this man, and the Gio vote is the majority of Nimba. Either you like that or not. I mean, how he plays out, how the Gio people will follow up and not, I don't know. But don't say that I said Prince Johnson is the most, or whatever it is, okay? That's not, I said he could have lost, Kun could have lose that election in 2017 or 2020, actually, if CPP had stayed together. So I question his popularity in Nimba. I do. I'm not that stupid. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Percy, you got 30 seconds. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, good show. Thank you guys for the show. But anyway, the young lady in the studio there, I'm sorry to say young lady, I don't even disrespect. Ms. Cole, I just want to tell some of her stuff she said in there was very out of place.
What's is this Percy?
Very far from reality.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is.
Okay, go ahead.
She is very far from reality. She doesn't want to say like grand politics at all. And if she's going to sell Charlene Bronski this way, it is wrong. When people are asking of Charlene, it's the way she was presented. Speak on the subject matter. Tell us why she was presented this way. Okay? We're not interested in how she used the bar and whatever she did. She's a novice. And then when you start to compare her with Joel Howard Taylor, I'm not a Joel Howard Taylor fan. Okay? Simply because of her husband.
It was not called, it was Muhammad.
Okay, so somebody who has been tested, you see what Joel Howard Taylor, she has carried herself maturely, okay, in the Georgia-led government. They have sidelined her. They have done everything. I mean, we all want to say right now they're trying to use her to bring her back. But you see her go through her own party, watch and see what happened to her in her party. Okay? Her party just have a crisis in there, they're trying to endorse, okay, with endorsement issues. She went ahead and called them on the side to resolve it. But did Charlene do this? No, Charlene didn't do this. Charlene told us it by her own admission on a talk show. She called Donald DeLong to a meeting. Did she ever resolve unity party issue? She said she attempted with her mother. That's all she told us. So I called my mother and my mother came, and we tried to put it together and blah, 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 XYZ. Did you put it together? One of the finalists asked her, did you finish what you started? Oh, no, I didn't finish it.
Right.
Okay? You started with Musa Berry.
Percy.
I'm sorry. Hello?
I said,
Yeah?
who you supporting in the election?
No, I support Dennis for now. I support nobody. I'm abstaining. I'm abstaining simply because I don't see, even I got 21 miles that I feel in Monrovia. I got 21 miles that I feel, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to tell them at this time to vote for anybody except for their own consciences.
Thank you.
Their own consciences. I can't tell anybody because right now, everybody is just, I mean, I cannot tell for two novices, in Mr. Cummings and Charlene Bronski. Okay? After our George, we don't need novices again. We can't be trying it. We can't try anymore after our George. I'm sorry. I used to be a Cummings person. Okay, but Cummings and the ability thing is going too far. Charlie and everybody, nobody put a stop to it. Nobody told Mr. Bronski, no, you went too far with this ability thing. And they all sit there. And the other day, they are so educated and so smarter than everybody. For who in the rest of the group? Okay, they asked the Basu by all you guys that sit with you.
Call is not part of ANC. Call is not part of ANC.
No, I'm not a member of ANC. I will never be a member of ANC. I'm speaking about truth, and that's some of the tribe-based thinking there. So when somebody speaks the truth, people want to put them in a tribe. So if I say Charlene is intelligent, she does not have to speak Bassa to be a Liberian, to represent Bassa, to represent Nimba, to represent any of us. You say, I'm saying these things because I am in a particular box. That's the tribe-based thinking, the identity politics, and it skews debates, it skews discussions, and frankly, everyone that has called in up until this point has not demonstrated the backwardness of this any more than your caller Percy has. Masterfully you, because what you have done is expose the underbelly and the underbelly of the society. You've also been able to masterfully expose your own ignorance. And I applaud you for this. I would like you to talk more so that our young people, who are the majority of the population, know exactly why they need to move away from people like you.
Call, let him finish. All right, let's go. Percy, just end your thoughts.
Let him talk without trying to make false accusations here. If he doesn't want to be interrupted, you speak your mind, don't speak mine.
You are a panelist,
Go ahead, Percy. Just finish.
It doesn't give you the right. It does not give you the right to put words into my mouth or misrepresent my thoughts or who I am. I will defend myself.
Yeah, you will have the time. Percy, please, 30 more seconds. Call, finish.
So you can go out falsely accuse people. You're not doing it to me, but do it to somebody else. I will respond.
Call let him finish. Percy, please end your thoughts.
Yeah, she's making me lose my train of thought. I don't know if
good. They were not correct.
It is working for her because, I mean, you know, come on now, bro.
Sorry, Percy. You struck a nerve.
Oh, you got to wait. Let him finish. Percy, please finish your call. Your call, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, brother, but you know, I mean,
yeah.
Let her just go ahead. Let her have it.
All right. I'm sorry about that. All right.
I mean, you know, let her go ahead. Let her go ahead.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We time is fast spent, and call you already responded.
I actually didn't, but I'll let you skip over me because you want to save the man's face more. But Dennis, on a serious note, it's okay to call and express your thoughts. You can't allow people to call and make disparaging comments and misrepresent people that are on your panel either. Yeah, that's not okay. And so if someone calls on this panel and lies about Muhammad or Dr. Dukle or anyone else, it should be nipped in the butt. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a professional,
right.
I'm a teacher. I'm not going to allow people to call and lie on me to my face and I'll defend myself.
Right. I told him that you were not part of ANC. We wanted him to finish.
It's not just about the ANC. He said many other things that were not true. And I interrupted no one else, even though I didn't disagree with them. But where I'm going to interrupt is when someone makes disparaging remarks about my character or misrepresents who I am. I will not let that slide.
Yeah, but we want to respect the person.
You don't respect people who call and make up stories and try to paint you in a light that is untrue. That's not about respect. So where's the respect for me? Where's the respect for the truth?
Right, and that's what we're trying to correct. That's what
no, but Dennis, don't make it sound like I was not justified in preventing someone from dragging my character through the mud.
Well, Cole, we got to give people a chance to speak so that we can.
We have to give people a chance to. He already said things about me that were not true. I should allow him to continue more.
All right.
Okay, guys.
Let's go to Mr. Sharif. If you have 30 seconds each, so we can respond to our callers, and then we go to our Tabata session. You are muted, sir.
Sorry, I was muted. I want to go back to Aliu Kamara. I don't understand what he was talking about there, and sometimes I don't. You know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But then again, this comes with, you know, the space in which we're in. So people, you know, take these 30 seconds, you know, and spew all kinds of things. So, you know, sometimes I think, you know, it's just. I feel like sometimes we're not on a, you know, the playing field is not level, because these guys take 30 seconds and they spew all the different things. But, you know, even though we are panelists, but we don't probably have the same opportunity because you cannot engage them. And I think that's the kind of thing that, you know, that I don't enjoy much. On this panel. Other than that, I mean, you know, it's been great. You know, the feedback that you hear. Look, it just goes back to us being who we are, and this is the kind of thing that collectively we should fight against. You know, so whether it was William Tolbert, oh yeah, you can see that's the man can speak Pele, oh this person couldn't speak that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. And for Mr. Tolbert, it didn't matter anyway. He spoke Pele. He was, you know, you could say he was more in tune with all Liberians, you know, than most presidents. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter anyway. He was much maligned and all of this. So it goes deep into something in us, in this sort of Liberian politics, and we got to get away from it.
Thank you. Thank you. Time is fast spent. We'll move to the Tabata session. And I will start because I don't want Mr. Sharif to take Koji from me.
I didn't watch it this week, so you can go ahead.
Right. What I saw the speech from Mr. Major Koji on those government officials he believed are crossing carpet, threatening them. I think that was complete tabata. As government, we saw that with Mr. Gray, Representative Gray, who said something against the Post and Telecom Minister, and he was gone. I mean, as a government, you have all the tools. Even if you want to, I mean, this is a government. We hardly see any firing or reshuffle, except that a partisan will come up and say something. So I think that was a complete tabata on the part of the mayor. Now that Koji is out of the way, let me go to Mr. Sharif for his tabata of the week.
Yeah, you know. Do you know that Koji always gave us, you know, more than one, you know, items? I mean, he's the gift that keeps giving all the time. So, but I can probably come back with something another time. Mine is going back to Mr. Cummins. You know, the CPP press release to Senator Johnson. In that process, Mr. Cummins's party or supporters were able to say that if elected, he will appoint a special prosecutor to, you know, to go after this man, to go after these people. I mean, so overnight, because of the statement in Prince Johnson's church. So overnight, all of a sudden now there is a policy craft around that. This is the kind of hypocrisy. This is the kind of thing that's that makes me cynical of Liberian politics. So all along, Mr. Cummings has never committed himself. I don't think that he has committed himself to war crimes court, right? Because he has all these people with him. Dr. Dukley put it right. You have all these parties that have embraced, the NPFL, the remnants of the NPFL. They've embraced, the remnants of the military junta. So all of them now, nobody have separated themselves. So there's no ideology that you can speak of. So to come overnight to say, if the legislature don't do it, the president, I'll ask the president, I'm going to appoint a special commission to prosecute, and they call Prince Johnson all kinds of names, which we already know is nothing new. So I mean, it was just not good for the CPP. It was not good for the CPP overall.
Thank you. Call your Tabata of the week.
Oh my gosh, so many. I would say the greatest Tabata for me, which I've already made very clear, is people who don't speak their dialects, which is the majority of people. This whole idea that a lot of these people are speaking their dialects so well and stuff. So most of our generation, most Liberians, young Liberians, don't speak their dialects very well. Even you go to Kanta, the Mano they're speaking is not a Mano their parents spoke. The world is changing. It is unfortunate that we're losing a lot of this stuff, but using that as a measure for someone's capacity to lead, which has never been done. Nobody measured, George Weah on his capacity to speak Kru, or Ellen Johnson Sirleaf on her capacity to speak Gola. It's the greatest form of hypocrisy to attack excellence and use something that has not been a measuring stick that has never been used in the selection process of a president in the entire history of the country, or a vice president for that matter. Against someone is the greatest tabata. And so you see otherwise intelligent people try to rationalize this is disturbing. So that for me is the greatest tabata.
Thank you. I don't know whether this will pass for tabata too, because Martin Brown said, Dennis, it depends on how PYJ wants to preach. There is no regulation on what God lays on his heart. So who determines which one of the sermon is worse than the other? We can question the blessed Holy Spirit, right? Mr. Salif, what's your tabata of the week?
Oh, you just skip me. Oh man, I have several. There's one. So Senator Sir Joseph, as part of his campaign, is he's spearheading various projects around Montserrat. I think this particular one is in the pipeline community where they're reconnecting the roads. And so he and of course former Defense Minister Daniel Chi is a permanent resident in that area. So so Joseph takes the finance minister, the public works minister, and several other officials and a bunch of CDC, but some from the community, some from other places, and they all surprised Daniel Chi, right? So they come to his house, and the guy is very elated. He's just heaping praises on the CDC government, on President Weah, and said, "This has never happened. That road, I built the road by myself. I paid $35,000, all of that. They've done this in the robot sector. They've done all kinds of, and some your trust stands up and say that people, I can say anything again. They may be talking everything, right? So then the ANC people get so upset. They're like, that ain't you going. Now you pressing President Weah. You pressing the CDC.
Oh, that's
on social media. They were like beating him, like, oh, they may hear that grievance seeker, they make him thinking that you could come and seek opportunities here. But Mr. Cummings says, if you're coming to corrupt or damn, I'm not your guy. So that's why he saw the whatever, and then he gone. I don't think that's what happened. I think he was just excited that, look, the finance minister is here, all these officials are here. I've been doing these community projects all by myself. Now they're here. They're doing political projects like election time, and he's praising them so they could fix the roads and electrify the community. That's why he was really doing. He overdid it a little bit, I thought. But they've taken him on social media, on the radio,
Oh
everywhere.
man.
Yeah, that he's just built out on them. He wasn't, suited for the Cummings team anyway, and he didn't say anything official like "I endorse you" or "Now I'm now with Cummings" anymore. I thought that was it
Right.
was nonsense. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah.
talk about identity politics. Dr. Duke, what's your tabata of the week?
My tabata of the week is a week in Liberia. You go from Monday to Monday. Every day you pick something and then you got something. But I'll start with the $100 million case, the drug case. That $100 million worth of cocaine, and nobody goes to jail. This got to be the most beautiful world. Can you imagine this? If you have to do that on per capita, for the US, it would mean like a whole tanker full of cocaine coming to the port of New York. They seize it. And the people are let go. And you can imagine the Attorney General saying, oh, well, I wasn't really following this, but, we had a capable prosecutor. I don't know what happened. We want to arrest those guys again. They say, oh, no, they're gone. Oh, they're gone. Well, how do they leave the country? So that's a real tabata. I mean, that was the $100 million case. It was the dumbest thing they could do.
All right. Masa Colley. My tabata is Obama pastor Reverend Wright preached politics in Chicago, but some Liberians are against other pastors doing so in Liberia. Still talking about Pastor Weah and Pastor Johnson. Dennis Jab, my tabata is the behavior of the Unity Party towards PYJ. When opponents tie PYJ to UP ticket, they reject it, but they rejoice when PIJ acts like the UP spokesman for 2023. That's from Kalebo Gonglo. And Elvis, you have your tabata somewhere. I don't find it. But Elvis, all right. So that's the that's it. We will be going around the room to close. Before we close, let me let you know that tomorrow, some people are referring to it as Rumble in the Jungle. We're going to have a debate. In our Friday night debate, should Liberians or Liberia elect Cummings Bromskin ticket to fix Liberia or retain the Weah Taylor ticket based on their records as the incumbent? We'll have Duke JJ and Peter Quiwie from the CPP, Jerome Gaiman and Y. Michael Gaiman from the CDC, and Tavina Ko, our independent, will be in between. Also, on the Hour of Politics, the Hour of Politics coming up on Friday, as Anthony Isaac W. Jackson will be the guest of the Political Bulldog to talk about 2023. You don't want to miss that. Then on Saturday, we'll have debate right here on FOL. That's the presidential debate of Union of Liberian Associations in Norway. They are bringing their debate right here on Focus on Liberia because they all realize that FOL is the home of the debate. So the presidential candidates contesting in that election will be here to debate the issues. This debate culture, we want to continue it so that President Weah, Cummings, Boakai, Gonglo, we want to have them here to debate. And the candidates are Eric Bedo Warner, Cole Boyu, and Richie Dan. They will be here to compete. At this time, we'll go around the room for your closing comments. Let me start with Mr. Salif.
Thank you, Dennis. I thought it was a passionate, insightful debate and conversation tonight, and I want to thank the viewers and those who contributed, called, and commented. I get it. I get it. Constitutionality. I get the the qualification question. There's no doubt, no question. Councillor Bromskin is very highly qualified Liberian woman, a legitimate Basel citizen, and someone who looks like goes to Basel, interacts with the people invested in that country, and so our parents or our grandparents. There's no question about that. What I would like to say, however, is that electoral politics, when you're running campaigns, and how you situate your message, the types of messages you send, should all be bordered around trying to win votes, trying to win hearts and minds. You've been persuasive. And so strategy boils down to messaging, because it's the message that drives the strategy, ultimately gets the candidate elected. So that being said, if you go to Bassa and promote the candidate as the Bassa land candidate, the candidate that the Bassa people will vote for their own this time around, to me, that sends the wrong message nationally, and so that was a little bit an overkill. Other than that, I applaud Councillor Brown-Skin. I mean, she's she could be on any ticket. I want to see her as vice president one day in Liberia, even if not this time. If she wins this time, all greases to the elbow, right? But she certainly has a place in Liberian politics, in the Liberian public square, in Liberian governance. And finally, at the end of the day, like we say here on FOL, we're all Liberians. The peace in Liberia, to me, is number one. We should keep the country peaceful. Our rhetoric, our political, our campaign narrative should be bordered on ideas. Who has better ideas, better platform, better vision for the country, so that the Liberian people can decide who they want to govern them. It shouldn't be about threats. It shouldn't be about violence. It shouldn't be about conflict and chaos. So that's my appeal, and because that is an area of concern for me.
Thank you. Dr. Duke.
I'll say thank you to everyone, people who called, my co-panelists, and I think we did go deep into these issues. Identity issue will always be part of politics. No matter where you go, you always have this, people who rotate around people who think the same way, who speak the same language, who probably have the same color of hair or whatever. In Liberia, unfortunately, sometimes it gets to the point where we just go too low, too basic, as if we have no political idea at all. So therefore, we sit down at the level of, do you speak the language, or where you might have come from, or all of that kind of stuff. But I think what's more important, though, is for the political leaders at this moment, when they're putting the, trying to craft their strategies and all of that, to get hold of the surrogates so that the campaigns don't run out of hands. Because this campaign is very important for a lot of people. I mean, you talk about, somebody could just say it's matter of death and life. Matter of death and life, yeah. Somebody who didn't have a bicycle 5 years ago and find himself with millions of dollars and find the prospect of probably losing everything and returning to a place where he was before, that can be very, very disheartening. So, and for Boaka, it's probably the last call, last run, he gets at this time. So everybody's a lot of, anxiety with these elections, but how can we keep it civil and quiet and democratic is the biggest challenge. And I hope the political leaders, those who want to be president, will bring their surrogates together and say, guys, hold on a little bit. We're not going to kill each other. We're just trying to win and be civilized about it. But the religion will always be part of it. We lived under religious exclusion in Liberia for 150 years. It's going to continue for a while till everybody wakes up.
Who's the we?
We, the whole country.
Okay. Thank you. Let me go to call for your closing.
Yes, I just wanted to say about 73.5% of the population of Liberia is under the age of 45. I want you to let that sink in for a minute. So most of the people who are going to be voting in this election are young people. They are not steeped in the clan-based tradition of their parents and grandparents and ancestors. Young people in the hinterland, what we call hinterland, is no longer hinterland. You've got Zwedru, which is an urban area, Buchanan, Ganta, Vonjama. The whole world is opening up. Everybody has a smartphone in their hand. The generation that's under 45 is not looking at clan-based societies to lead them. They're looking at the future. They're seeing their counterparts all around the world They see artificial intelligence. They see the technology and the advancements of all of these people around the world on their little smartphones that they're holding in their hand. And they're asking themselves, is this clan-based, tribal, archaic mentality going to get me here? Or is my national identity as a Liberian going to get me here? And so all of these people that are over the age of 45, calling in, talking about things that are fleeting memories and things of the past, they need to realize that Charlene Brumskin represents the future. The majority, the 73.5% of the population are not the people who do not know how to communicate, do not know how to use technology. They are growing. Our people are growing. We are not stagnant. Culture evolves. It is not stagnant. And this is not a bad thing. So your predictions based on, oh, you know, we do this. Yes, we respect the culture, we respect the tradition, but we're trying to innovate and build the future. Women like Charlene Brumskin are the type of women we want our daughters to aspire to be. These are the women that are going to solve the problems. These are the women that are going to advance our society and pull us out of poverty. These are the women that have the answers and the solutions to the things that ail us. We need to understand to value the solution finders, the people who struggle hard and go to school and become somebody, and not only for themselves, but for their people. She does not have to be in Liberia. She can live anywhere in the world with her education and her credentials and be just fine. This is a selfless patriot of our country. And this is what we all should strive to be. And we should not be denigrating each other based on trivial things. I am called Ye Hido Fambula. I do not speak Mano. You will respect my Liberianness the same way I will demand that respect for Charlene. Y'all have a great night. Thanks for watching the show. And you know, let's keep our ethnic differences where they should be. It should be a cultural thing that we all respect and admire each other for, not something that tears us apart. Have a good night.
Thank you. Tomorrow at Saturday at 7 o'clock, join us on the Liberian History Channel. We're going to be completing our series on President Tubman. And also that may mark the end of our president series. We have 3 more presidents, but we may leave that to our civics teachers. So on Saturday at 7 p.m., William V.S. Tubman Part 3, join us right here on Focus on Liberia. With me, your host and our presenter will be called Iya Famule, my woman from
Ganta, from Benga, from Ganta. Ganta again.
Mr. Sharif, you got the last word.
Yeah, thanks for the last word. Or thanks for the selection, I should say. So, you know, Liberia should advance, must advance. You know, Dr. Dukman put it right. You know, it seems like we can't get to the ideology portion of it. We're stuck on, you know, just the immaterial things. You know, can you speak my language? Who are you? You know, do you know the chief? Do you know the quarter chief the year you were born? Do you know who was your neighbor? Those kinds of things, you know. It's retrogressive, it's backward, and I think we're still stuck in our mud, and we should move forward. You know, we should move forward. This is the 21st century, and I hope that Liberia will move forward. And I want to touch on, you know, so speaking of Charlene, as I mentioned earlier, and I stand by that. She's very qualified. She's more qualified. She's competent than the current vice president of the Republic of Liberia. She knows what she's doing. Joe Howard Taylor doesn't know what she's doing. So you know, religious people have played very big roles in Liberia. You know, a lot of us went to religious schools. You know, I'm one of those. I'm a product of both the Liberian public school system. Dennis, that you always talk about, Waplo Institute, which was a public school right here in that village. And I came up back to my father, in Zoedu and went to the Catholic school, right? So I went to the AGM, Assemblies of God Mission School. I went to Catholic school. So, you know, they've
you were privileged.
What's that?
You were privileged.
Praise God. Praise God. We always say Alhamdulillah. Praise God. Yes, I can say that we were. Yes, I think so. I think so because not a lot of people kids at that time could afford to go to those institutions, and my father was willing to sacrifice and put us through those institutions. My mother was able to sacrifice for us, as well. And so, those Catholic and those who sacrificed also were these nuns that came from the United States and other places to teach us. Who else sacrificed? We look on the political scene. I just talked about Reverend Father Hickey, guys like that who, in the midst of the military dictatorship, stood up for poor people, stood up and spoke truth to power. Those people did what they had to do. And Reverend Father Hickey was declared persona non grata and expelled from Liberia. He will go back after the war, after the Civil War. After the Civil War, I think he passed away some 4 or 5 years ago. I also remember Sister Shirley Coleman. Sister Shirley Coleman was one of the 5 nuns who was killed by the brutality of the NPFL, caught up to them in Gardnersville. And Sister Shirley Coleman was killed in cold blood by some of the guys who are alive today, and they've never been prosecuted. Sister Shirley Coleman taught me at the University of Liberia. So I think about those people who are the reason why we are who we are. I think about Sheikh Kafumba Kone. Sheikh Kafumba Kone was one of those people who was always in the forefront for peaceful coexistence among Muslims and Christians. Sheikh Kafumba Kone was one of those who went behind rebel lines in the early days of the Civil War and told asked Charles Taylor to lay down his arms. Sheikh Kafumba Kone returned to Monrovia and asked Samuel Doe, step down. This is going to destroy the country. Let us find a peaceful solution. So people like that who sacrifice, along with Bishop Michael Pakala Francis, guys who sacrifice for the country. So I think about those people. So when the history of Liberia is written, the new history, it should include all these people, not just the elites. It should include people, from the bottom up, from inside out, so that we're recognizing these people. We're recognizing women. We're recognizing young people. We're recognizing, church leaders, clergymen, all of that. So, everybody in some ways have contributed to Liberia. It's not done yet. Liberia is a project, like many societies, project. It's a dynamic process that you mentioned, Cole. It should continue, and we should be open-minded, to completing that project. So thank you.
Thank you so much on that. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Admet. Thank you, Dr. Duke. Thanks to all our viewers and our callers, even those who commented and those who will watch later. Always focus on Liberia is the place to be. I hear people arguing about biggest platform, this platform, that. Most of it is all noise. Watch, focus on Liberia and be educated and get the information pertinent to the growth of our country. Until then, we end with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Have a good night and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.